My mum said my presence would ruin the trip, so I cancelled everything they planned with my money and watched it all fall apart from afar. They planned the perfect family vacation. Every hotel, every train, every glass of wine in Tuscany without telling me a word. But they made one mistake. They used my money. My mother grabbed me aside and said, "Next week is special, and you being there would ruin it." My father added, "You're too different now." I clinkered my fork to my glass. Duly noticed. That night, he reversed all Italy charges, locked their URL passes, and cancelled their airport connections. At check-in, they rewritten everything. My brother's text arrived first. "Unblock the account now," I responded. I was so enraged that I couldn't sleep. They arranged everything without me. A perfect holiday in Italy from Venice to Florence to Rome. Everything was meticulously planned. Luxury hotels, high-speed trains, exclusive vineyard tours in Tuscany, and dinner reservations at restaurants where you must know someone to even be on the wait list. They planned it on their own and utilized my money to do it. Not one mention of me, nor my name, nor my daughter Lily's, nor my son Ethan's. Just my mother, father, sister Brooke, her husband Tyler, and their 2 children. That was the family they envisioned, the one that counted. It hit me when I received the email confirmation. It wasn't intended to come to me. Brooke must have forwarded it by accident. It showed everything, dates, passengers, and the schedule. And it felt like someone punched me in the chest. I sat there rereading everything, hoping to see my name somewhere in the footnotes. It never arrived. Mum proposed the idea 6 months ago during one of our regular Sunday dinners. She stated that she had always wanted to take a large family trip. She stated that she wanted the kids to experience Europe while they were still young. She added that Brooke and Tyler were short in cash and asked if I'd be prepared to help handle the initial expenses. She said she will settle it later. With enthusiasm, I replied, "Yes, of course." I recently secured a large consulting contract and wanted to do something special for the family, something that would help us become closer. I paid for the entire thing, flights, hotels, boarding cards, and so forth. Then they cut me out altogether. I didn't approach them immediately. I waited till Sunday. They were all there acting as if nothing had happened. Mum prepared baked CDASI if it were just another Sunday. Dad spoke about golf. Brooke sat there smiling as if the knife had not already been twisted. After dinner, I casually mentioned the trip, saying, "It all sounds beautiful this time of year." Silence. Mum looked at me and said, "Next week is just special, and having me there would ruin it." Dad leaned back and remarked, "You're too different now." Nobody disagreed. None of them spoke up. It seemed as if they had all practiced it. I clinkered my fork against the glass. Duly noticed. I did not argue. I did not ask for an explanation. I took my kids home and helped them prepare for bed. And once the home was quiet, I began tow work. Everything remained in my name, including hotel rooms, passes, and transfers. They hadn't touched the bill. They did not even have the decency to conceal their arrogance. I reversed each charge one by one. Freeze the travel cards. I locked the train passes. We cancelled the transfers. The hotel reservations are no longer Lilia-label. I sat back and watched everything burn. Tyler sent his first text message at 7:42 am the next day. "I've unblocked the account now." I said, "Sorry, I'm too different now." Then followed the calls from Mum and emails from Dad. Brooke texted me a screenshot of her crying daughter and claimed I was being unkind, but I did not respond. They intended to focus this trip on their family. Okay, let them find it out on their own expense. They were still unaware that this was only the beginning. They strutted it into JFK like they owned it. First-class tickets with matching baggage sets. Tyler even wore loafers without socks. He seemed to believe that this automatically made him European. Brooke's Instagram story captioned, "Kai Bella," featured a boomerang of champagne glasses clinking. I wasn't even upset at that point. I was simply waiting. They had no idea anything was gone. I had not just reversed the costs and cancelled the appointments. I had contacted each motel and described the scenario. Cancelled the Rome airport cast of ice and the Chianti vineyard excursion. I reported the URL passes as stolen. Changed the login information for the travel portal. Left no sign that the journey was ever theirs. I knew exactly when it began to fall apart. Their flight was scheduled to board at 6:40 p.m. At 6:12, I received a text from Tyler. "Why are we denied boarding?" Then Brooke, "Did you cancel the flights?" Then came a flood of calls. Everything is neglected. It must have been chaotic. 4 parents and 2 children stood at the gate, astonished, trying to figure out why a trip that was meant to be completely paid for suddenly did not exist. Brooke may become loud. Tyler pretends to be calm. Dad attempting to assert some fictitious authority. Mom is probably just standing there mad. Someone told her no. I sat in my kitchen with Lily and Ethan, helping them bake pizza from scratch. They knew nothing. I wanted it that way. I continue to believe that Grandma and Grandpa had to cancel their vacation due to unforeseen circumstances. Approximately 9:00 p.m. The text tone shifted. Tyler, you are acting psychotic. You're harming your own family. Brooke, your children will hear about this someday. I did not respond either. I allowed the silence to work. Then Dad sent a message that nearly made me chuckle. You have embarrassed us. I said, you've gone too far. I hope it was still special. Next morning, I noticed their car in the driveway. They returned 20 hours after flight, defeated and drained. That's when the new game began. The second stratum of this entire tragedy. At 3:47 p.m., the doorbell rang. It was Mum. No makeup, hair pulled back. Her tone ranged between neutral and annoyed. She did not begin with an apology, not even close. She said, all right, you have made your point. I let her speak. She went on to say how such acts build wedges in families. I needed to be more tolerant, and it wasn't fair to spoil something they had planned for so long simply because I felt excluded. Following this, she stated, anyway, I wanted to talk to you about the backyard. The contract is still scheduled to start next month, and we don't want to lose the date. Your dad said you might be able to help cover the deposit. He gave her a look. She truly believed I would come around. Some part of me still wanted in. That money was simply something I would always provide because that is what I had always done. I nodded slowly. Let me check my accounts, I said. I'll let you know by the end of this week. She smiled as though she had won something back. She left satisfied. And that was ideal because it was now my turn to play. The silence was strategic. I could tell they were allowing me just enough space to save face. Calculation, not respect. In their views, I was presumably sulking, regretting my actions at the airport and running out of steam. They expected me to return with a check and an apology as I usually did. They didn't comprehend that something had finally shattered in me. On Thursday, the first feeler arrived. Brooke texted as if she were contacting a co-worker. Hey, Mum mentioned you were thinking about helping with the backyard project. Please let us know so that we can confirm with the contractor. There was not even one question in there. There was no warmth, only the blank family tone they used whenever they needed anything. I left it unread for several hours. Then I replied, we're still sorting things out. We'll let you know soon. That quickly changed into tomorrow, then the day after. By Friday morning, Mum had sent a longer note. The contractor requires the deposit today to hold the schedule. We're attempting not to miss the fall installation window. Could you confirm? I wrote back. I might be able to ship half. Let me check with me bank. I did not check anything. Saturday. Nothing from me. Sunday is still peaceful. Monday, Dad called. I watched his name appear on my screen and let it ring out. A minute later, the text arrived. We are not attempting to put you under pressure. All we need is to know what's going on, so we can plan accordingly. I texted back. I totally legit it. Should get an answer soon. And I let it stretch again. Brooke sent a voice memo on Wednesday afternoon. I didn't even listen, just looked at the waveform. She was most likely pretending to be kind, understand, and act as if everything was normal. Later that night, I finally responded. Talked to the bank today. Small issue with a flag transaction. I think I can send it by Friday. That was the final hook. The one who made them wait again made them circle another date on the calendar in anticipation. Friday arrived and passed no payment, no message. Saturday morning, Dad wrote, we told the contractor we'd handle it ourselves. Don't worry about it. Followed by a different message from Mum. If you still wish to contribute later, every bithups. I could sense the frustration building beneath those remarks. Not because of the money, but because I wasn't doing what I was used to doing. Save them. Smooth it all over. Make the discomfort go away. And now they were trapped with their agony. Brooke emailed a photograph that night. Their backyard had patchy grass with a few white markers designating where a patio may have gone. She captioned it, still hoping to accomplish something before few other turns. I did not respond. I simply stared at it. The space between us was no longer uneasy. It was expanding with purpose. For the first time in my life, I was finished making sure they were okay, and they were just beginning to understand what that meant. A week passed with nothing but stillness. There was no note from Mum, Dad, or Brooke. No nice nudges in the backyard. There have been no developments about rescheduling the trip. Just nothing. It might have seemed tranquil if I hadn't known them so well. They were not moving on. They were regrouping, waiting for me to leave, and making me believe I was the one who had walked away. Then a completely unexpected event occurred. I received anthems from my cousin Rachel. "Hello, just checking in. Grandma is terribly upset about the Italy situation. You okay?" It completely stopped me. Grandma, she had not been mentioned once in the entire fiasco. She lives alone in Albany and has not traveled in over a decade. Shezin's handmade thank you cards and remembers everyone's birthdays. I always avoided family drama. I asked Rachel what Grandma was concerned about. She proceeded. Brooke told her you cancelled the trip out of nowhere and made them lose thousands. Grandma's confused and thinks you might be having some kind of breakdown. That's it. They were already altering the story. I was no longer the man who had to foot the tab and was excluded. I was now the erratic son who ruined a pleasant family getaway. Of course, they were distorted in that direction. They have always had control over the narrative up until now. I called Grandma. She responded right away. Voice is soft but heavy. "Nathan," she asked, "what happened, honey?" I told her everything. I didn't make it overly dramatic. I did not vent. I just lay everything out. How I was requested to pay months ago. How they prepared every aspect without involving me or Michaeldren. How I discovered out by accident, and so when I brought it up, they said I had destroyed the trip simply by being there. She did not interrupt once. After a long pause, she stated, "That is not what they told me. They said you refused to go. You claimed you cancelled the cards in a fit of wrath." I told her it wasn't even close. She was quiet again. Then she said, "I'm so sorry, Nathan. I don't know what's wrong with them." That was all I needed to know. But the consequences came swiftly. An hour later, I received a text message from my mother. "Did you tell Grandma a warped version of events?" Then Brooke, "You're making matters worse. She is old, Nathan. She does not need this much stress." Tyler even joined in. "This is harmful behavior, man. You are turning people against their own families." I finished reading each one without feeling furious or sad. They had excluded me, lied about it, attempted to influence Grandma, and now have the audacity to accuse me of being divisive. So I responded with a final note, forwarded to the group chat with the four of them. "I'm ceasing to provide financial assistance effective immediately. No more vacations, renovations, loans, or we'll pay you back texts. If I'm too different to be a member of the family, I'm also too different to support it. Good luck with backyard." I pressed send and put my phone down. Nobody replied that night, not because they were surprised, but because they realized I meant it. About a week after I cut them off, Brooke called me out of nowhere. A full phone call, not just a text. I didn't respond. She left a voicemail with an almost humorous tone, bright and charming, as if we were catching up after a trip. She stated she had been thinking about what I said and that we should all get together soon. She even mentioned that the kids miss you, as if that were a magical phrase. A few days later, Mum texted me a photo of a stack of inexpensive patio stones thrown in period. "There are no workers, no development, only a mess." She wrote, "We're still going to try and make it work ourselves. Found a good deal locally." It was a shift, subtle, careful, just enough to imply how hard we're working without you, while still offering me a door to crawl through if I wanted to. "Return." I said, "Looks promising. Let me know if you need help falling." This opened the door just enough, and they walked right in. Mum texted a long essay about how every family goes through seasons and how she hoped I understood that money was not the reason we wanted you around. She explained that we had all gotten a little lost in the planning process and that it might be time for a reset. Brooke contacted me separately. She said she had been feeling odd since the airport incident and wanted to reconnect. There is no pressure. She asked if we could get coffee next week just to discuss. No expectations. Even Tyler, who normally sent one-word replies or passive-aggressive emojis, texted, "I think I overreacted." We all did. No hard sentiments. It was an impressive shift, similar to a full-fledged rebranding campaign. Suddenly, I wasn't toxic, unpredictable, or too unconventional. I was valuable again, useful. So, I decided to give them a taste of their own medicine. I informed Brooke that I would love to meet. I selected a date and time. She responded with a heart emoji and even expressed an interest in purchasing. Then, the morning of, I cancelled, said something cryptic about a long work call. She was disappointed but polite. I completely understand. Let us reschedule soon. We did not. A few days later, Moo asked if I could pitch in a little with gravel delivery. Just $300 will help offset the shortfall. I replied I'd check some things and get back to her. I did not. Dad indicated they were looking into firewood delivery for the winter. They said that the provider they used last year had hiked pricing. I asked him to provide me the URL. I said I would see what I could do. He did. I did not. And each time they followed up, he responded in the same tone they had used with me for years. Empty courtesy, courteous avoidance, and hazy curiosity, no commitment. It worked better than I expected. Brooke became silent first. I stopped responding to even the most basic text messages. Then Mum's communications became shorter, more spread apart, and then stopped entirely. Tyler unfollowed me on Instagram. When October arrived, Dad did not send out his regular happy birthday group text to the entire family. That one was strange. It has been going out like clockwork for 10 years. The funny aspect was that they couldn't say anything about it. I'd done nothing wrong. I had not yelled, cursed, or told them off. I'd just become them. They had always been this version of themselves to me. All promises, no payment, all surface, no substance. And he believed for the first time they experienced what it was like to be outside of their own games. It must have been hellish. Thanksgiving arrived as it always does, creeping up while you're still certain it's only October. Something was different this year though. My phone remained quiet. Not a single group text from Mum. Brooke sodded not provide a passive, aggressive reminder. Please RSVP this year as she used to do. There will be no half-hearted invitation from Dad, which is generally inserted as a forwarded message, like an afterthought. It was first occasion in my life that I wasn't invited. I did not say anything. I didn't ask. I didn't send a hello. What's the plan? SMS merely to pretend that I wasn't expecting one. Instead, on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, I saw it all unfold on social media. Brooke went full Pinterest this year. There was a large table set for 10 with many pumpkins as placeholders, handwritten name cards, and napkins folded in Tosmal fans. She captioned it, grateful for the real ones. Each chair was full, each plate has a name. Mine was not one of them. Neither was Lily's nor Ethan's single quotes s.it was deliberate. It was not about forgetting. It wasn't a miscommunication. They made a choice. No, Nathan. There was no reminder of what had changed, just a carefully crafted version of family. The one who did not challenge them. They were never asked to feel sorry or responsibility. I did not tell Lily or Ethan anything. We prepared our own dinner, not turkey. They voted for homemade mac and cheese and waffles. So that is what we did. We ate on the couch, watched old movies, and laughed so hard that I almost forgot what day it was. A few days later, I ran across Rachel again. The parking lot for the grocery shop. Same weird half smile. They did not invite you. She inquired even though she already knew the answer. Nope, I said. First year. She nodded slowly. Brooke explained to Grandma that it was just easier this way. Less tension means less tension. That's how he put it. Cutting me and my children out altogether. They could mute us just like background noise. As if their issue isn't what they did to me, but how uncomfortable it felt them to look at it. Christmas came next and I didn't even check my phone. The only snapshot I saw came from a neighbor who follows Brooke on Instagram. She displayed a family photo in front of the fireplace. Matching pajamas, 5 stockings, hot cocoa as usual. I zoomed in out of curiosity. There were names on the stockings. None for my children. There was no Lily, Ethan, or me, not even a just-in-case placeholder hanging at the end. The message could not have been clearer. They weren't simply excluding. They were deleting us. It seems ridiculous at first. I would be lying if I said otherwise. But the discomfort did not last. It transformed into something colder and quieter. Not bitterness, but distance. I had no idea I could achieve such emotional quiet. By January, I had stopped checking their names and my alerts. I drove Lily and Ethan to Seattle for New Year's. It's just us. We walked around Pike Place Market in the rain, rode the Ferris wheel, purchased costly souvenirs, and stayed in a hotel with a fireplace and robes that made them chuckle. It was not traditional. It was not planned down to the second. It was real. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel as though I was missing anything. I did not feel left out. I felt free. Surprisingly, that was my most financially successful year. I landed 3 new clients, finally completed a nightmarish project from the previous year, and had more money in my accounts than I'd ever had. I could have purchased Melanie's entire backyard times over. They could have paid for the trip again and upgraded every seat. Could have given them a blank check to show a point. Instead, I constructed a header driveway in my home and began arranging a summer road vacation with my children. There's no need for group conversation. No approval is required. They stopped inviting me, not because I had changed, but because I had ceased following their rules. I stopped making it easy for people to use and disregard me simultaneously. And once the money was gone and I made it obvious that nothing else came with it, not silence, forgiveness, or a smile, they had no idea how to treat me again. So they didn't. They cut me out for their own comfort, and I stayed outside to keep my peace. 2 months have gone. It was February when I received the envelope, plain with no return address. Only my name written in my mother's unsteady handwriting, as if she wasn't sure whether to send it. I stood in the kitchen staring at it for a while. I could have tossed it, but curiosity won. Inside was a folded note and a check. The letter contained only 2 paragraphs. The first stated that they were reaching out to repair what was left. The second stated that the check was for your half of the Italy vacation as you did not attend. It went for $3,600. I laughed. Actually laughed. Not because he off the quantity, but because they still assumed it was about money. Like they could wrap a ribbon around that week, repay my missing experience, and pretend nothing occurred. As if writing me a check will make up for the way they abandoned me and my children. I did not cash it. I fastened it on the fridge with a magnet and left it there. Tyler sent me a message 3 days later. Only 1 sentence. We need to talk. I ignored it. Brooke then texted, Grandma's in the hospital. She asked for you. That made me pause. I called the hospital and confirmed it was correct. She had a mild heart condition, nothing serious, but she had asked for me twice. So I drove up. When I walked in, she smiled like if I hadn't missed a beat, like we hadn't missed 2 holidays and a dozen family gatherings. We talked for an hour largely about books, weather, and miscellaneous topics. Then she continued, don't let them write theming without you. I wasn't sure what to answer. On the way home, I stopped at a diner and sat in my car with a coffee, staring at the check once again in my thoughts. That night, Brooke called again. This time, I picked up, cherished right in, saying they wanted to reset everything. Said it could be time for a real conversation. She did not apologize, not precisely. However, she stated that the children inquired as to why they had not seen Lily and Ethan in such a long time. She suggested we get everyone together soon. Then comes the unexpected part. She mentioned that her mother and father were discussing selling the house. She stated that the proceeds from the sale might be put into pooled account for family purposes. She called and they hoped I might help construct something for the future. It did not even respond. I've just ended the call. The following morning, I mailed the check back. There's no note, just the check. That was the end. No fighting, no yelling. Just silence. Nothing has happened since then. No texts, calls, or phony family brunches. It's as if they sensed I was done playing alone. There is no longer leverage or fallback. The group threads have stopped humming. Birthdays. Gown mentioned. Rachel told me that the house eventually sold. They purchased a modest property outside the city. Nobody invited me to see it. I don't believe they hate me. I believe I scared them. Because I was not bitter, I was not dramatic, I did not try to win. I've just departed and I did not look back. The time my boss outsmarted a cheating client a few years ago, my boss, Barry, got screwed over by a client. It wasn't a huge amount, just a couple $1,000s, but the fact remains, he trusted Big Daddy Construction, delivered the work, and they flat out denied payment. Barry consulted a lawyer. The verdict? Since there was no written contract, going to court was pointless. Even if he won, legal fees would exceed any compensation. Big Daddy's response? Something along the lines of, "My lawyer will crush your lawyer." Barry asked, the one question every lawyer dreams of hearing, "So what exactly was I supposed to do differently?" It was 2017. Big Daddy landed a project to build a new restaurant. Barry submitted a bid to supply and install door hardware, handles, emergency locks, door closers, and 3 automatic door operators. These are the things you've seen at accessible entrances: a metal button with a wheelchair symbol that opens the door for people with mobility challenges. Barry won the tender and called a meeting. He would personally manage the project. All communication with Big Daddy had to go through him. Anyone calling about trivial matters like, "Nice weather, isn't it?" would be transferred immediately to Barry, under threat of immediate termination. No one on the team could give Big Daddy staff Barry's number. After hours, technicians could only call back and leave a message for Barry. Weeks later, the general contractor GC called. He managed the project on behalf of Big Daddy and was the boss's son. He was a tyrant, aggressive, foul-mouthed, and convinced the world revolved around him. GC's job was coordinating all contractors and ensuring the construction phases happened in order: walls first, then plumbing, electrical, drywall, tiling, painting, ceiling, cabinets, fixtures, and finally, the plumbing fixtures. Managing all that is stressful, requiring collaboration, but screaming and cursing doesn't help. We needed to install 3 automatic door operators, 2 at the entrances and 1 in the accessible restroom. By law, there had to be a wheelchair accessible restroom. This restroom was in the corridor used by waiters. The restaurant's decor was a dark Victorian gentleman's club, thick oak, carpets, a decorative wall with niches for sculptures and paintings. When GC called saying everything was ready, Barry and the team installed the door operators according to the tender. Big Daddy was supposed to provide 120 volts power to the operators and 12 volts wiring from the activation buttons to the control board. None of that was done. Barry improvised. He connected the operators via an extension cord and used a wireless transmitter and receiver so the buttons would work. This was all allowed under the tender conditions. Once the permanent wiring was installed, Barry personally supervised the connection. GC signed the installation acceptance document. In fine print, it stated that Big Daddy was fully responsible for compliance with building codes. GC didn't even read it, just scribbled a signature and left. Barry made sure a technician watched him sign. About 2 weeks before the restaurant's opening, GC called in a panic. None of the door operators worked, and the restaurant couldn't open without them. The next day, Barry went to the site with the technician. "Barry, I found the problem." GC, "Well, fix this damn problem." Barry, "The doors don't have 120 volts power, and there's no 12 volts wiring for the buttons. You didn't run the cables." GC, "That wasn't my job." Barry, "Why didn't you tell me last time? You signed this." GC, "Where's the electrician?" The electrician arrives. Barry, "What happened? Why isn't the wiring done?" Electrician, "It's not in my scope." Barry, "Good news, if we use wireless controls for the buttons, we won't need the 12 volts wiring. I'll bill this as additional work." Barry knew that once the 120 volts power was supplied, the operators would work. That's when GC realized how screwed he was. The restaurant's finishing work was 90% complete, but no power had been run to a critical part of the building. Without it, there was no way to get an occupancy permit. Big Daddy had assumed that either Barry or the electrician would handle it, but they hadn't included it in anyone's assignment. The electrical panel was deep in the kitchen. Running 120 volts to the main entrance meant going through the ceiling, a nearly impossible task. The decorative ceiling was already installed, so Barry would have had to either run metal conduit on the surface of the decorative wall or dismantle part of the ceiling, pull the cables, and then restore everything. The accessible restroom was easier. It was closer and the wiring could go through a drop ceiling. That wing also had offices and storage areas with regular tiled ceilings, unlike the 6-meter high ceilings in the main hall. The electrician quoted GC a fat sum for the extra work. Remember the accessible restroom? During a preliminary inspection, the building inspector found the usable space too small after accounting for the inward opening door. Rebuilding the restroom, moving walls, and relocating plumbing would be expensive and time-consuming. GC decided to simply reverse the door swing so it opened outward into the corridor. This had terrible consequences for restaurant operations. Every time someone used the restroom, the door blocked waiters moving food between the kitchen and dining room. People, even those without disabilities, often chose this restroom because it was the closest. A few days later, after discovering that the entrance doors needed 120 volts power, GC called Barry. The power was now connected, so Barry went to the site with a technician. A heater called an air curtain had been installed at the main entrance, a massive device blowing hot air to keep cold air out. GC had connected the 120 volts to the same circuit as the heater. Barry explained that according to the tender, each door operator needed its own dedicated line. GC didn't care and said, "Just hook these things up." Barry connected them and got GC's signature on a new acceptance certificate. This time, in fine print, it explicitly stated that lack of a dedicated line voided all warranties and any work would be billed separately. GC didn't read it, just signed and left. As usual, these operators are extremely sensitive to power quality. Each has a motor controlled by a board regulating door opening speed, hold time, closing speed, and force. Any voltage spike can destroy the board, blow a fuse, and damage components. A replacement board costs about $30, with half an hour to repair and another half hour to test. Barry had even sent one of his technicians for manufacturer training to become certified in board repairs. Normally, they'd just ship the broken board back and order a new one. A couple of days later, GC panicked. The final inspection for occupancy was tomorrow, and one entrance operator wasn't working. "GC, your damn operator isn't working. Fix it immediately." Barry, "Fine, but this isn't covered by warranty. You didn't provide a dedicated line." "GC, it's been less than a week." "That's warranty." Barry, "Nope, guaranteed voided. You want a new operator? You'll pay, or I have a certified refurbished board ready for 80% of a new one. It will be installed by noon tomorrow. Which do you choose?" Barry knew GC and Big Daddy were trying to cheat him again, just like last time. Every call GC made had been recorded. Remember the notice about calls being recorded for quality assurance? Barry had never had to use it. Until now, Barry's phone never initiated calls. Every incoming call from GC was recorded and saved. Of course, a few days later, one of the door operators failed again. Barry called GC to confirm if he was satisfied with the refurbished board. After getting confirmation, Barry removed the burnt board, installed the refurbished one, and took the faulty board back to the workshop for repair. A new control board cost $750. Barry billed $600 for the refurbished one. The repair itself cost a maximum of $75, and per tender rules, out of warranty work was 1 to 5 hour with a minimum of 4 hours 500 for labor alone. Installation and calibration took at least 45 minutes. Each repair brought Barry around $1,100 in the first 2 months. There were 27 board replacements. Every call was initiated by GC personally, and Barry received oral approval for each. If someone from the restaurant called instead, they were redirected to GC and told that service would only happen at his direct request. Then, GC's father, the main boss at Big Daddy, called. "Father of GC, why the hell are we billed almost 30 grand? Barry explained, and a meeting was scheduled. Barry met with his lawyer with all signed acts and detailed recordings of conversations with GC. It quickly became clear that GC had screwed up big time, while Barry had everything documented perfectly. The Big Daddy boss drilled GC with a look and told Barry, "If you want your money, you'll have to sue." Barry smiled and laid down his ace, the mechanics lien against Big Daddy Restaurants and MI Realty, the building owner. This legal tool allows contractors or subcontractors to claim against a property if the owner hasn't paid for completed work. Here's the kicker. The restaurant belonged to the internationally famous chef Mish, who convinces high-profile investors to fund new restaurants. The place has become top tier, investors sell and profit, and Mish earns a cut for lending his name. But now the restaurant couldn't be sold due to the lien. The investors' lawyers went wild. They weren't dealing with just any lawyer. They were about to clash with Barry's level of legal precision. Barry had taken his revenge perfectly. He then officially suspended service of the door operators due to the unpaid invoice. His company was the only authorized installer and service provider for this brand in the region, with exclusive rights from the manufacturer. All other companies in the area had been warned. When Big Daddy tried to call the manufacturer directly, they referred him back to Barry. Barry would absolutely get his payment. By standard procedure, 10% of the payment to the construction company is retained for a year, enough to cover the full invoice. The restaurant would pay Barry, then deduct it from Big Daddy, or they could sue and be forced to settle the debts in full. Meanwhile, Barry's competitors were left in the lurch. Big Daddy may have tried to hire someone else for service, but Barry's friends in the industry were warned, ensuring his control. Some competitors might have been used, and Barry's moves effectively punished anyone undercutting him. Think about it, with decades of experience, Barry probably knew from the start that none of the tenders included 120 volts power, the restroom didn't meet codes, and GC, famous for cutting corners, would connect the door operators to the rear curtain. Barry's master plan played out perfectly. This was professional revenge at its finest. I kicked out my husband and his manipulative friend after he let her move into our house and even wanted to share a bedroom with her. I'm 28, my husband is 30. We've been married for 4 years, having tied the knot after 3 years of dating. Overall, our relationship was fine except for one major issue: his deep connection with his best friend. He always called her his best friend, and she's been his neighbor since childhood. They were inseparable from a very young age. Let's call her Fiona. Fiona and my husband went to the same kindergarten, attended the same primary, middle, and high school, and even enrolled in the same college, though they studied in different departments. They were attached at the hip, and it was impossible for me to forget it because they constantly brought up memories from their past at every opportunity. They only drifted apart once they started working. That's when I met my husband. Fiona once told me, rather casually, that I was the third most important woman in my husband's life. First was his mother, second was her, and then came me. She said it jokingly, but I have no doubt she truly believed it. Honestly, I always felt she disliked me and saw me as a rival. When my husband first introduced me to her, he presented her as his older friend, and I tried to be polite. But almost immediately, she mocked my makeup, claiming I didn't need to impress her. It happened repeatedly. She constantly made cutting remarks about my makeup, clothing, and so on. Sometimes her compliments left me feeling insecure. Once, she bluntly told me that my husband had a thing for dumb blondes and I was a blonde. I'm sure you get the picture. I tried talking to my husband about it several times before we got married, expressing my uneasy feelings about Fiona. But he brushed me off, saying I'd get used to her over time. He insisted that she wasn't liked by everyone because she never filtered her words and was too blunt for most women. Looking back, the fact that he belittled others to make her look good should have set off alarm bells. But at the time, it seemed trivial compared to the chance to be with him. He was perfect in every other way: intelligent, funny, charming. I was willing to tolerate Fiona because I loved him deeply, and he constantly reassured me that he loved me. So I let it slide. Over time, I stopped paying attention to Fiona and refused to let her get under my skin. Things improved even more when she got a boyfriend. She no longer picked on me without reason. 4 years ago, Fiona met Eddie through a dating app, and within a year, they were engaged. Saying she was head over heels in love doesn't even begin to cover it, and it seemed he was just as smitten. Despite their obvious attachment, I still believed that a year wasn't enough to truly know someone. They hadn't lived together long enough to consider marriage seriously. Fiona and I weren't friends, and I knew if I said anything, she would throw a fit, so I stayed silent. I confided in my husband, hoping he would gently guide her toward a rational decision, but he only gushed about how wonderful it was that he and Fiona got engaged around the same time as us, even hinting they might have a joint wedding. They actually discussed having a combined ceremony, but I stopped it early, pointing out that Fiona and I had too many fundamental differences. Thankfully, she didn't push it. Fiona married Eddie about a month after our wedding, and everything was fine until recently. 5 months ago, Fiona confided in my husband that she was having trouble conceiving. They planned to get medical evaluations after trying unsuccessfully for nearly 6 months. Unfortunately, it turned out Fiona was infertile. From that point, their marriage began to unravel. Even therapy with a family psychologist didn't help, because Eddie went ahead and filed for divorce. He didn't want to be with a woman who couldn't have children, unwilling to spend his life in a childless marriage. Honestly, I felt some sympathy for Fiona. She started visiting us much more often than before, and I tolerated it because I understood how difficult things were for her, and apparently, my husband was her only true friend. I couldn't get upset about her frequent visits, especially since she would just cry every time, and my husband would try to console her. It was almost impossible to be angry at someone already enduring such emotional pain, especially knowing she truly loved Eddie. Then came the divorce proceedings and property negotiations. They had to see each other often, which made things even harder for her. She began spiraling into complete despair. That's when my husband asked if she could stay with us for a while, claiming it would help her feel normal again being near him. This was about 2 weeks ago. As soon as I let her into my home, I immediately regretted it. She criticized literally everything I did, and it always seemed to slide off her back. She was depressed, unhappy with the food, our home decor, even my choice of TV shows. Ultimately, we had to follow her rules because according to my husband, that's what she needed right now. I told him multiple times that Fiona needed to leave, that if she disliked everything, she should return to her parents. But he begged me to let her stay, worried she might do something foolish if we threw her out in such a fragile state. I stayed silent, unwilling to take responsibility if something happened. 2 days ago, however, I finally had to kick them both out because they crossed all boundaries. When I came home from work, I saw my husband had moved some of his belongings from our bedroom into the guest room where Fiona was staying. He had even come home early to organize everything. When I walked in, they were still moving his things into the room. I was in shock and asked my husband if we could talk privately, but he said we could talk right in front of Fiona. Honestly, for the first time in weeks, she looked happy. I asked why he was moving into the guest room, and he calmly replied that he would now be living in the same room with Fiona. I just froze for a few seconds when I asked, "What the hell is going on?" He said that Fiona had been having panic attacks for several days and needed someone to comfort her at night when she woke up in a panic over the divorce. I immediately told him that was out of the question and that he must be insane if he thought I would accept this. But once again, he used his favorite excuse about Fiona. She's like a sister to him, and I had nothing to worry about. Both of them stood there, smiling at me, as if that smile could make the whole situation normal and acceptable. I was so angry and disappointed that I wanted to hit them both. But instead, my rage reached a point where I decided to act differently. I smiled at them in return and said that I completely understood and that everything was absolutely fine with me. My husband even dared to say he was sure I would understand, and they continued arranging the room. Meanwhile, I went back to our bedroom and retrieved the house documents. My father had given me this house when I started my first job, and it was legally in my name only, so the house legally belonged to me. When I found the papers, I returned to the guest room and politely asked if they had finished unpacking. When they said yes, I told them it was time to pack again because very soon they would be outside, free to play happy family as much as they liked. My husband couldn't understand what was happening for a few seconds until I showed him the documents and told him that the house was mine and that I would no longer tolerate this in my own home or allow them to humiliate me. He tried to joke, thinking I was kidding, but when he realized I wasn't laughing, he said I was being absurd and couldn't just kick them out. I told him I could, and I was doing it so arguing was pointless. I said I was disgusted by him, and even more by Fiona, because she now represented a strange mix of a drama queen and a whiner, which drove me crazy. Fiona, of course, burst into tears again, and my husband defended her, accusing me of always being jealous because of my insecurities. I didn't deny it because it was true. I really am that way. But the cause wasn't me, it was their twisted relationship. I told them that if they couldn't live without each other, they shouldn't try to build relationships with anyone else and ruin their lives the way they ruined mine. A heated argument followed, but in the end, they left. My husband said he felt insulted because he loved me and that still wasn't enough for me. Fiona kept crying, accusing me one last time of jealousy and cruelty. I didn't respond. I had no energy left to argue with them. I just wanted them gone. I thought all my problems would end once they left, but I was wrong. As soon as I kicked them out, our mutual friends, the ones who never cared about our marriage before, started messaging me, saying I was making a mountain out of a molehill. In their view, my husband only wanted to support Fiona because panic attacks are serious, and instead of showing empathy, I turned it into drama and made it about my own insecurities. I immediately realized he had probably orchestrated this because all the messages were almost identical. I tried to ignore them, then he involved his family. Everyone insisted I was awful for kicking them out while Fiona was going through such a difficult time. They said I had no heart and didn't deserve a husband like him. From the start, it was clear he wasn't the right match for me. Deep down, I always knew it, which is why I felt threatened by Fiona. I realized arguing with them was pointless, so I blocked everyone for my own peace of mind. No one tried to understand my feelings. They didn't care, they only cared about my husband and Fiona and their own feelings. I thought blocking them would solve the problem, and I was already planning to file for divorce. But my husband reached out again from a different number, saying he was still willing to come back if I apologized. In that message, he repeated that he had always considered Fiona a sister, not someone he had romantic feelings for. So, I must have misunderstood everything. He said he cared for her and even loved her, but it was a platonic, brotherly love, not the kind he felt for me. He said the thought of living without me was unbearable, that leaving had been a mistake. But he also felt I overreacted and misunderstood everything. He asked me to think calmly, weigh the consequences, and not make a foolish decision I'd regret for life. He said he was willing to restore our relationship if we both apologized for the misunderstanding. I honestly don't know how to respond because I feel like I didn't overreact. And now, I'm not even sure if divorcing him is the right decision, especially since he keeps insisting Fiona is like a sister to him. Honestly, his message threw me off completely, and I'm not sure if I should follow through. I really feel like I did the right thing by kicking him out after he said he wanted to sleep in the same room as his childhood friend to comfort her during nighttime panic attacks. Before we continue to the update, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Personally, I think the author did the right thing. It doesn't matter what kind of relationship her husband has with this friend. Romantic or platonic, it's all inappropriate. Even a sibling-like bond of this intensity is unhealthy. It reminds me of the movie The Dreamers 2003, where a young man befriends a brother and sister with extremely strange boundaries. They weren't sleeping together, yet their relationship went far beyond what's normal for siblings. They were stuck in some kind of childhood period, even though they were already fully grown adults. And it all ended with the main character simply not being able to take it anymore and leaving because these people started doing complete nonsense, putting their lives in danger. Not just minor danger, but real, life-threatening danger. So yes, absolutely. The author should leave a husband like that if he allows himself such behavior. Now, let's continue. Update 1. Well, it seems I was truly blind. The comments on my first post opened my eyes because I realized I had simply let my guard down. And now my marriage is ruined. I should have stopped his friendship with Fiona from the very beginning. Even if it meant we would have broken up back then, it would have been worth it, because at least I wouldn't be getting a divorce now because of her. I just don't understand how I let things get so far between them. Maybe I just loved him too much. Maybe I still do. That's why I seriously considered forgiveness and the idea of getting back together. In my defense, he is good with words and had spent years convincing me that his friendship with Fiona was completely normal, and that my insecurities were my own problem. He constantly gaslighted me, insisting I was wrong. It was years of manipulation, and in the end, he pushed me to the breaking point by wanting to sleep in the same room with her. That was the final straw. My parents support me and believe I did the right thing filing for divorce. After something like that, restoring the marriage is impossible. He can't just take back his words, and I don't think he will break off his relationship with Fiona for me. A few days have passed, and I still haven't responded to him. I don't even know where they are now, and honestly, I don't want to, because I wouldn't like any of the possibilities. I deserve someone who puts me first, and my husband never did. I was a complete fool. I hope one day he will put me above Fiona, but now I understand that will never happen, and it's better for us to separate. I filed for divorce and hope the papers will be served to him soon. Thank you again to everyone who commented and helped me realize how foolish I was. I really needed to hear that. Update 2. My husband was served the papers a week ago, and he decided not to contest the divorce. It seems that if he's not going to fight for the marriage in court, there should be nothing more to discuss, but he came to me yesterday evening to say how disappointed he was that I was leaving him over such a small matter. I didn't expect him at all, especially after humiliating him and kicking them both out. But he said he needed to collect some belongings, so I let him in. When he finished, he sat across from me on the couch and said he wanted to talk. I stayed, silent, waiting for him to speak. He said he wouldn't contest the divorce if I insisted, but he wanted me to know that, in his opinion, I was making a mistake. He claimed he had always loved only me, and it hurt him that I even thought he could betray me. Regarding Fiona, he said she and he were now living at his parents' house, and the whole family was upset by my decision to leave over such nonsense. After being served, my mother-in-law allegedly wanted to talk to me herself, but he stopped her out of respect for my choice, not wanting to pressure me through family. I found this slightly hypocritical, considering that this man orchestrated messages from all our mutual friends, begging me to take him back and calling me heartless after I kicked them out. I reminded him of it, and he clearly got nervous. He denied involvement, claiming everyone wrote of their own free will, but I'm no fool. I showed him the messages from our friends, they were identical. It was obvious someone gave them instructions on what to say, and they just copied the text. His denials changed nothing. He tried to steer the conversation elsewhere and complained about how hard the last few days had been, realizing our marriage was ending. He began crying on the couch, saying life would never be the same without me. And he kept thinking about how it could be fixed. It was already fairly fake, but the tears were too much. I felt no sympathy, and the first thing that came to mind was maybe I would reconsider the divorce if he promised never to see Fiona again. That truly shocked him. He almost immediately stopped crying, and we sat in silence, waiting to see who would speak first. For the record, I had no intention of staying with him, regardless of his answer. Even if he said he would end things with Fiona, I still would have left. Of course, he didn't say that. Instead, he argued that I was unfair, repeating the same lines I had heard in every argument about their friendship, that Fiona was his oldest friend, like a sister, and he couldn't abandon her, especially now during her hardships. But leaving me, his wife, to whom he had made vows, that was somehow normal. I was tired of listening to his excuses for why he had to maintain his friendship with Fiona, so I interrupted him. I told him that's exactly why I was leaving. Even when he had a choice between staying with me or keeping Fiona in his life, he chose her. So now he can't complain that I didn't give him a chance or that I overreacted. I was right in everything, and he had nothing to say. He simply stood up and left. Now, all that remains is to wait for the official procedures to begin. Update 3. A few weeks have passed since the last update, and today we met in court for the first time. According to the laws of our state, we have to wait at least 6 months before the divorce can be finalized. After the hearing, my husband approached me and said he was willing to wait all 6 months if it would help me come back to him. I was completely shocked that he was still trying to win me back, even though we hadn't seen or spoken to each other for weeks. I thought there was nothing left to talk about now that we were at the point of divorce, but he spoke and tried to make contact. I asked if he was still living with Fiona, and he couldn't answer. We just stood there in silence. I rolled my eyes and was about to get in the car when he said Fiona couldn't go back to her parents because her mother is unbearable, and blames Fiona for the divorce, supposedly because she is responsible for not being able to have children. That's why she first moved in with us and then with his parents. I knew I probably should have felt sorry for her, but honestly, it was hard to feel compassion for someone who always made me feel worthless and ultimately caused my divorce. I told my husband, already sitting in the car, that Fiona had plenty of other friends, including some single people who would gladly take her in. He just refuses to admit that there's something wrong with their friendship. It's because of her that we're divorcing. But he still refuses to face the obvious truth that letting her move in with us was completely unnecessary. We argued again, and it only confirmed how foolish I had been all this time. I can't believe I even considered giving our marriage another chance. These relationships cost me too much friends, nerves, and a ton of money. Fiona lived with us for free, and now I even have to pay a lawyer. It's insane. I forgave so much just because I loved my husband, and he didn't even love me enough to admit that letting Fiona move in was a mistake. He's absurdly stubborn when it comes to her. I think it's good that we're divorcing. Now he can finally be with the woman he truly loves and stop wasting my time. I really hope he finally understands this and stops chasing after me. Update 4. Something absolutely crazy happened. I still can't believe my husband said such terrible things about Fiona. We saw each other just a few days ago, and I didn't expect him to show up again so soon, but yesterday he came to finally admit that he was wrong and that I was right about everything. He apologized and admitted his mistakes. Honestly, I didn't think I'd ever hear that. I still can't believe he finally realized how wrong he was and that Fiona was always against me. I got home from work and was calmly going about my day when he suddenly started banging on the door. When I opened it, he just stormed in without waiting for me to say anything, and I immediately knew he was on edge.at first. I thought he was coming to start an argument and was ready to call the cops to have him removed from my property. But to my surprise, he started crying again this time for real, not for show like last time. I dropped everything and tried to comfort him. After all, I'm human too. I'm not the kind of person who stands by while someone cries and does nothing. Even if it had been Fiona, I would have done the same. After a while, he calmed down and explained that he had taken a day off and spent the whole day at home depressed about the divorce. Fiona came into his room to comfort him, but instead started flirting with him. She had never done that before. He tried to push her away, saying he wasn't in the mood for jokes, but she tried to get close to him. That's when he set boundaries. He realized I had been right about her all along. Even though he had always seen her strictly as a friend, or even like a sister, she had been trying to make a move on him all this time. They had a huge fight, and Fiona accused him of leading her on all these years, then marrying me, called him a traitor, packed her things, and moved back with her parents, and now he came to apologize to me and admit that I was right about everything. He said he regretted taking me for granted and recognized that he didn't deserve a woman like me, and maybe this divorce would finally help him get his life together. We talked a little and clarified things. I realized he wasn't lying when he said he loved only me and saw Fiona as a sister. It still wasn't enough for me to go back to him, but at least I feel much better about my decision. We're still divorcing, but we'll try to finish things on good terms. I really hope we manage that. My husband left the family to join a men-only crowd, then years later came crawling back hoping for a warm welcome in 29. I got married 6 years ago, but we've been divorced for 3 years now. I have 2 sons from my ex-husband. Adam, he's 30, ages 4 and 5. I have full custody because he didn't want the burden of a family. We were happy for the first 3 years of marriage, had 2 wonderful children, and were even planning to buy our own home to move out of our apartment. Then suddenly he says, I want to be free and explore the world. We'd been together since high school and were everything to each other. He was my first in everything and I was his. I always thought we'd be together forever. He seemed fine with not having much experience with other women besides me. But 3 years into the marriage, he told me he was unhappy and wanted us both to free ourselves from the burden, meaning our marriage and family, so we could live life to the fullest. It all sounded like nonsense. I couldn't understand it because I was sure he loved me. Adam insisted he still loved me, but you see, he also loved himself and wanted to give himself a chance to see the world. I even suggested temporarily opening our marriage, even though it would hurt me, just so he'd stay and not leave for good. But that idea didn't work for him. He wanted a divorce to keep things honest. I was crushed because it came out of nowhere. When I cried, he told me everything would be fine and that if we were meant to be, he'd come back. It was absurd and unfair, but that's how our marriage ended. One day he just packed his things and left to explore the world alone, leaving me with 2 kids without a second thought. When I asked what he thought would happen to the kids, he suggested leaving them with someone I trust so I could also travel and meet new people. That's when I fully realized he'd lost his mind. I stopped fighting the divorce. It went through easily. He didn't want anything and was willing to walk away from all responsibilities. His parents had money, so child support wasn't an issue. He had visitation rights but barely used them. When he did, he'd have me take the kids to his parents' house while he sat in another room, avoiding us. Even those visits stopped after the first couple of months. I later found out the real reason for his behavior from my friend Rachel, who had mutual acquaintances with Adam. Her cousin was part of the exact group of friends that influenced Adam. That cousin told her the whole story. About 2 months after our divorce, Rachel learned the truth. Her cousin lived a very indulgent lifestyle and was part of a men-only group, 6-7 guys who believed relationships were a burden. They had some kind of singleness pact. Adam was brought into the group by a colleague who thought he'd fit right in even though he had a wife and 2 kids. Rachel's cousin bragged to relatives that they had convinced a married man with kids to drop the dead weight and become successful, which is exactly what Adam did. He divorced me and gave up custody just to fully commit to their ideology. Rachel, curious, asked what the guy looked like. When her cousin pointed to Adam in a group photo, she instantly put 2 and 2 together and came to tell me. When I found out he had left us to join some ridiculous adventure-seeking club, I was furious. Honestly, it would have been easier. For me, if he'd just cheated, at least that would be a more understandable reason than this nonsense. I wanted to call and scream at him, but I didn't. Knowing the real reason only convinced me further that nothing I could say would change him. So I focused on raising my sons to be better men than their father. I hired a nanny, worked twice as hard so I could leave work at the office and devote my home time to my kids. My parents helped a lot. Even my ex-in-laws occasionally offered minimal help, probably out of shame for their son. They were the ones paying the child support, since Adam reportedly blew his own money on exotic trips and luxury hotels. Now my boys are sweet, well-behaved, and love each other dearly. We are our own family, and that's all we need. I barely think about Adam anymore. I worked my way into a great position and now earn double what I used to. For the last 2 years, everything was going great until last week. Out of nowhere, after 3 full years of no contact, Adam showed up. It was a Sunday and we were all at home. We even have enough saved now to buy our own house. But I stayed in this apartment because I love it so much and it's convenient for work. Obviously, I should have moved after all, because unfortunately, by staying in the same place, Adam knew where to find me. That day, he just showed up at our door without warning, and honestly, it felt like the air got knocked out of my lungs. It had been so many years. For the first few seconds, we were both silent, and I just looked at him, this awkward, huge bouquet of red roses, his teary smile. Call me heartless, but I didn't feel the slightest bit of tenderness or excitement, only pure, burning hatred, and before he could say anything, I slammed the door with all my strength so hard the floor shook. I told the kids to go to their rooms because I knew he'd try to convince me of something, and I definitely wouldn't be able to stay calm. Rage, resentment, and anger were boiling inside me, and I didn't want my kids to witness the chaos that was about to start. Sure enough, as soon as the kids left, Adam started whining that he didn't expect such a reception. I could hear him trying his hardest not to break into tears, which only pissed me off more. This was the guy who had dumped all this bitch on me for years ahead, and now he dared to cry and act like he was the victim. Then he started saying he had come back to apologize, that he regretted everything he'd done in the past, and now he just wanted his old life back. I was shocked, but I let him finish, because some part of me wanted to hear that apology, whatever that word even meant to him. I had completely erased him from my mind, but his sudden appearance stirred everything up again, and maybe, in some twisted way, I enjoyed the chance to put him in his place. I wanted him to know that without him, our lives had only gotten better, and nobody missed him. He went on for a couple of minutes about how much fun he'd had all these years, but in the end, he felt empty because there was no one to come back to accept another lonely hotel room. He admitted that in recent months, he felt like something was missing and finally made the very difficult decision to come back and apologize so he could fix everything. Turns out the thrill of traveling and exploring life with his new group of friends had burned out within a few months, but he clung to that lifestyle because he was afraid to return. He thought that since he'd sacrificed so much for it, he had to stick with it until the end. But now, he just wanted to get it all back. The more he talked, the more I wanted to open the door and punch him in his stupid face with all my strength. I couldn't listen to this nonsense anymore, so I told him to leave us alone, that I didn't want to see or hear him again. But Adam being Adam, he was sure that if he kept rambling and begging at my door, he'd convince me eventually. At some point, it got extremely annoying and the kids needed to be called for dinner, so I just banged on the door and yelled that we were no longer a family and that he should get the hell out. I think that actually stunned him, because after that, I didn't hear him anymore. When the kids were having dinner, I immediately called my lawyer and told him everything that had happened just in case. Then I called my parents, told them about Adam's visit, what he said, and how I responded. They assured me I'd done the right thing and had nothing to worry about. I didn't call my ex-in-laws, I didn't even know what to say to them, and I'm sure their son will tell them himself anyway. But as soon as I finished those calls, Rachel rang. Since she was the one who once told me the truth about why Adam left, I answered, already guessing she had something important to say, and I was right. The first thing she asked was if Adam had come by. I said yes, and then she told me her cousin had just called her to explain exactly why he had come back. Rachel and I are very close friends, and ever since she passed me that information from her cousin, she's told him to inform her immediately about anything related to Adam, because I was the one he dumped back then. When her cousin found out about me, I think he suddenly stopped feeling proud about recruiting Adam. I don't blame them, it's Adam's fault alone for being such a spineless coward. Her cousin promised to keep us updated about Adam and even contacted me once himself to apologize. I forgave him, I had no grudges, but of course, we didn't become friends. He had been telling Rachel what Adam was up to, so I'd always known what was going on with him. By the way, after the divorce, Adam had blocked me everywhere, and now her cousin reached out to Rachel again to tell her the truth about why Adam had returned, and she passed it on to me. Apparently, their group had a shared chat since they first met. Just a couple of hours before Adam showed up at my door, he wrote in there about his plan. The guys seemed to support him at first, but Adam suddenly exploded, accusing them of fake support. He yelled that they had betrayed him because he'd sacrificed his whole life, left his wife and kids to live like them, but it turned out that over the years, they'd all gotten into relationships, and now he was the only one left, like the last idiot who actually ditched his family just to party with the boys. And meanwhile, those guys, most of them are now dating someone. They told him it wasn't fair to expect them to stick to the same ideology forever, especially since their whole no women philosophy was something they came up with when they were young and stupid. Now most of them are in their 30s and don't need that lifestyle anymore. In fact, a couple of them have been in serious relationships for over a year, and one of them is even engaged. So all their macho bragging from back then could just be tossed in the trash, and the only person who truly got screwed over was Adam, but he turned out to be the only idiot who believed all that nonsense they were spouting. As a result, a serious argument broke out between Adam and those guys, the very same people who once congratulated him for leaving me, but now they themselves want the life he gave up for them. And even though they were still trying to support him when he said he wanted everything back, it wasn't enough for him. He wanted them to apologize for making him leave his wife and kids. That's what the whole fight was about. The guys refused to apologize, and rightly so. They were just sharing their views, but none of them ever told Adam he had to leave us to be part of their circle. Of course, he would have had to give up the idea of traveling the world and living like them, since he had obligations at home, me and the kids, but he still could have stayed friends with them. No ultimatums were ever given. He left us of his own free will for the life he thought he wanted, just so he could fit into the group. And now he's doing the same thing again now that most of those guys are in relationships. He once again felt the pressure, once again wanted to be like everyone else. And that's the real reason he came back, not out of a sense of duty or emptiness like he tried to tell me. When I heard all this from Rachel, I started shaking because I had actually felt guilty for kicking him out. That's why I called my parents, wanting to hear that I'd done the right thing. If I had known all this beforehand, he really would have gotten it from me. But Rachel's cousin had been swamped at work, and while all this was being discussed in the group chat, he wasn't checking his phone, so he didn't know anything. Later, when he had time and saw the messages, he told Rachel right away, and she called me. So I only learned all this after Adam's visit, but now that I knew the real reason he came back, I decided once and for all that I would never let him back in, and I wasn't going to feel guilty anymore. He never once felt guilty about what he put me and the kids through, so why should I feel anything? He's just a terrible person, period. I mentally prepared myself for him to try crawling back again, but it never happened. For the next couple of days, I heard nothing. I even asked Rachel to check with her cousin if he knew anything, but he said he had no idea because after that fight, Adam had blocked everyone from the group, even Rachel's cousin, though he hadn't even been part of the argument and only learned about it afterward. That was a problem for me because if even the cousin was blocked, I completely lost my source of information about what Adam might do next. Adam is the kind of person who, before buying a damn pair of shoes, will talk it over with 5 people. He never does anything without consulting someone. And now that he'd blocked everyone, I was in total uncertainty. So naturally, when my former in-laws called me 3 days ago, I was caught off guard and didn't know what to expect. They said they were calling to discuss what I told Adam when he came to make things right. I told them I didn't want him back, and that was that. But they started saying that all this time they'd continued to pay child support and made sure their grandkids never went without anything, so I had no right to claim that we were no longer his family. We argued over the phone because they started defending him, and in the end, I just hung up. I keep replaying it in my head, but I still don't understand exactly what I did wrong. I honestly don't think I did anything bad, But in one thing, my in-laws were right. They have been fulfilling their part of the agreement, and technically, Adam still has the right to see the kids, he just hasn't exercised it in a long time. I don't know what to do now. On the one hand, I do want my kids to have a father, even though I'm managing fine on my own, so I don't want to take that away from him, not even sure I have the legal right to. I just can't make sense of anything right now. The only thing on my mind is my children. Am I wrong for telling my ex-husband that me and the kids are no longer his family after he abandoned us for 3 years? First update. Hi everyone, thank you for your comments and support. I've decided to file an appeal and try to change the custody arrangements so that Adam will no longer even have the right to see the children. I don't know if I'll succeed or not, but it's worth a try. It's been 2 days since I posted my story here, and that's exactly the advice I received from most of you, so that's what I'm going to do. My parents support me too. The fact that Adam and his parents pay child support just means they were fulfilling the legal part of the agreement, but everything else fell entirely on me. I raised our children while he was out having fun with his buddies. He can't just decide when it's convenient for him to be part of our lives and show up on his own terms. Second update today, I filed the paperwork to terminate Adam's parental rights, and honestly, I really regret not doing it sooner. I should have filed as soon as he stopped visiting the kids a couple of months after he left us, but oh well, better late than never. Many people here commented on my decision, but I take back my earlier words about not wanting to deprive the kids of a father. They never had a father around, and who knows, Adam might one day walk out again. He was gone for 3 years, and now he can leave for good if he wants to live for himself, but not at the expense of my nerves and my children's mental health. I won't allow it, and I truly don't think I'm taking anything away from my kids because they never had a father to begin with, so they won't be missing anyone. Third update, so I didn't manage to fully terminate his parental rights, but now he can only see the kids if I'm personally present. That's something at least now he can't just push us around. If he can prove to the court that he's capable of being a stable and reliable father, then maybe we'll reconsider this arrangement. But for now, this is the maximum he gets. As for me, he is never coming back to me. That's not even up for discussion. After the court hearing, when he tried to talk to me again, I snapped and told him straight out that I knew about his pathetic need to fit into the cool crowd and that he should just marry his buddies because he's never getting anything from me. And if he weren't the father of my children, I wouldn't even give him a second glance. Then I just left with the kids, leaving him and his parents standing there with their jaws dropped. Damn, that felt good. So that's where things stand now. I don't know what will happen next, but I'm glad this at least turned out in the children's favor. They are the only ones who matter to me. Now, if Adam somehow manages to become a normal, responsible father and take on his parental duties, maybe my kids won't have to grow up without a dad, and maybe they won't have to learn how to shave from YouTube tutorials. But if he even once tries to pull any crap again, he will deeply regret it. He's already messed with my head enough, but I will never let my children go through that, no matter what. For the money, so I secretly used her connections to get revenge. Now my ex is trying to get me back. I'm 29, and I've been dating my fiancée Bella, 25, for almost a year now. Bella is an aspiring model and an incredibly beautiful woman. So beautiful that for the first few months, I couldn't even believe we were together. My friends couldn't believe it either, because I look completely average. Even though people say looks aren't everything, I still felt strange being with someone so attractive compared to me. I was fine with simple dates, but about 6 months in, she started hinting that we should get married. By that time, I was so in love with her that I was ready to grant her any wish. So 7 months after we started dating, I decided to propose to Bella, and she accepted without hesitation. Friends and family were a bit shocked at how quickly things were moving. But since I was happy, they were happy for me and didn't ask too many questions. Our relationship was going relatively well. We had our ups and downs, but I believed our love was real, at least on my end. About 3 months ago, she invited her girlfriends over to help with wedding preparations. That day, I wasn't feeling well and was napping in the bedroom, but eventually I got up to get something to eat. Near the kitchen, I stopped because I overheard Bella and her friends talking about me in the living room. They didn't see me and kept making nasty comments about me, laughing at their mean jokes. They mocked all my insecurities, and I stood there burning with anger and shame. The worst part was when Bella herself joked that she'd snagged herself a rich idiot with crappy looks and was now living the dream. That cruel joke made them all laugh together. I went back to my room because I couldn't listen to any more. I didn't even want to know what else she might have said. I was furious. I wanted to dump her right then, but I decided to play the long game to use her the same way she was using me. I'm a web developer and make decent money, so I cover all the bills since Bella can't afford to. She's just starting her modeling career and doesn't earn enough to maintain the lifestyle she wants, and her parents aren't wealthy enough to help. She moved in with me just 2 months after we started dating because she said she couldn't afford rent. I offered her a temporary place, but she never left. Since then, I've paid for all her expenses, casting taxes, clothes, accessories, makeup, everything. So she wasn't wrong. She really did find herself a rich idiot. When I overheard that conversation with her friends, I almost ended it then and there, but I came up with a better plan. I have a cousin, let's call her Irene, 23, who had tried to become a model. I knew she had plenty of money because her father is extremely successful, but he disapproved of her career choice, calling it a waste of time, and refused to help until she landed a few contracts on her own. Irene moved to my city a few months after I started dating Bella, and I knew she could use my help. But Bella forbade me from helping her, claiming the modeling industry was too competitive and that helping Irene would make her a threat. So Irene had to fend for herself. Despite having her dad's credit card, she was young, had no contacts, and no networking skills. After overhearing Bella's nasty comments, I decided to help Irene in exchange for half the money from any contract she got thanks to my tips. From then on, I tracked all the castings Bella went to, met the right people there, and passed those contacts to Irene. Sometimes she got the job, sometimes not. But every time she did, she sent me a full $1,000 because she was angry at her dad for refusing to help her. That was a lot, but I wasn't going to complain if she wanted to spite her father, and I profited from it all the better. I kept this hidden from Bella, of course. If she saw me suddenly taking an interest in something I'd never cared about before, she'd get suspicious. This went on for months, and over time I completely lost feelings for Bella. I didn't break up with her because I was still using her connections to help Irene, but otherwise I kept our interactions to a minimum. When we were together, I acted romantic and sweet so she wouldn't suspect anything. About a week after I overheard her trash-talking me, I told my parents I wasn't going to marry Bella. They didn't know the details, but they knew the wedding was off. I didn't tell Bella, and she kept planning, asking me to book venues and vendors. I agreed, but never actually did anything. This week, several things happened at once, and she finally found out what I'd been doing behind her back. Wedding invitations were supposed to go out now, but as I said, I hadn't prepared anything. And my cousin Irene finally signed a contract with a very prestigious modeling agency. She was incredibly grateful, and even her father thanked me so much so that he sent me an extra $5,000 for all my help. To be honest, they are quite generous people. And just a few days ago, when Bella asked why the invitations still hadn't been sent, I finally decided to confess everything to her and end our relationship. I had spent many months maintaining this disguise, and now that I had earned enough from it, I saw no point in continuing this act. Ren had achieved what she wanted and no longer needed my help. Besides, I had completely lost all feelings for Bella, so there was simply no reason to stay with her any longer. When she asked about the invitation, I told her the truth, that I hadn't done any of the planning and that there would be no wedding at all. She was, of course, stunned and asked if I was joking. Then I admitted that I had heard her little joke with her girlfriends and hadn't forgiven her. When she asked why I stayed with her for so long, I told her I had used her to advance Ren's career and that Ren had paid me very generously for that help. Since I decided to tell the truth, hiding anything was pointless, so I honestly confessed everything. She was shocked by what she heard, and her reaction was simply hysterical. She cried, screamed, and made a scene, saying I had betrayed and used her. I told her that it all happened solely because of what she had said to her friends behind my back. Then Bella started claiming that it was just a joke, that the joke wasn't funny at all, but rather very hurtful and humiliating. We argued about it for a while longer, but then she gave up and said I had betrayed her in the worst possible way over a simple joke, and that she wouldn't wish that on even her enemies. She completely broke down and said that she really loved me, and I didn't even think it necessary to talk to her first. I just decided to destroy our relationship over some stupid joke. I stood my ground and explained that for me, it wasn't just a joke, it hit a nerve. Jokes should be funny, not outright cruel. and her words sounded exactly like that. What hurt me was not only her words, but the fact that she sat among her equally shallow girlfriends and mocked my appearance. She didn't even try to defend me. On the contrary, she joined in the laughter at my expense. That hurt the most. I was the one who paid for absolutely everything she wanted and constantly cared about her happiness. So I clearly didn't deserve such treatment. Moreover, I started working even harder to support both of us. So hearing her mock me for not being as attractive as she was especially painful. She packed her things right after the argument and left about an hour later. I didn't even try to stop her. I was so angry and hurt. For the next 2 days, I completely immersed myself in work to forget and feel nothing. It's clear that I had long stopped loving her, but I was still used to her presence. Sometimes, it seemed to me that I could fall in love with her again. But now that it was all over, I just didn't know what to do alone in the empty house I came back to. This morning, I received a message from Bella saying that she still loves me and is ready to fix everything if I want to. She wrote that she misses me terribly and can't imagine her life without me. I still haven't answered because I don't know what to say. I don't know if I miss her, if I love her, if I want to get back together or not. I have no answers to any of these questions because my feelings are a complete mess right now. I don't know what to reply to her. I feel like a complete asshole for what I did to her. Maybe she was right. Maybe I really misunderstood everything and made a mountain out of a molehill. After all, I did use Bella to promote Ren's career and get rich myself. Update. In the end, I didn't reply to Bella's message. I read a lot of comments and messages to my post and realized that maybe I really crossed a line. I was even going to contact Bella and apologize for everything that happened, but then I got a message from her friend who wanted to tell me something. She sent me a screenshot of a conversation with Bella where Bella was asking to stay at her place for some time because her boyfriend, meaning me, the loser, wouldn't make up with her or until she found someone new. Her friend told me that. Bella sent this message to their entire friend group and said that she left after the fight but didn't explain what exactly the fight was about. This friend felt awkward because Bella kept badmouthing me even though we were supposed to get married in a couple of months. So she decided to tell me what Bella was saying about me behind my back just to ease her conscience. She didn't know. I already knew how Bella spoke about me, but I'm grateful her conscience woke up in time and saved me from apologizing to Bella and taking her back. Back then, I really dodged a bullet. All the criticism and judgment I got for staying with Bella just for revenge were pretty fair. That made me rethink my attitude towards the situation and almost pushed me to apologize. But unfortunately, we were all just being played because Bella really deserved everything I did to her. Maybe if it was a normal and less selfish person, I would admit I was wrong. But this is Bella. She is literally the embodiment of narcissism and selfishness. I still can't believe she was ready to come back to me just because she had nowhere else to live. Although it's not surprising, since in recent months she became pretty lazy. She just went to castings and did nothing around the house. But it didn't bother me. I calmly cleaned up after both of us because she brought me good money thanks to Ren. She didn't even go shopping, so I spent less than I earned. When I saw that screenshot, I was so glad I hadn't replied to her yet. And after that, I definitely decided there will be no reunion. She's just a disgusting person. What I did to her can almost be called madness, but she completely deserved it. I blocked her on all possible platforms and am even thinking about moving to a bigger apartment so I don't have to deal with her anymore. I've done pretty well thanks to Ren and her father, and in a couple of weeks I should get a raise. So it's the perfect time to think about moving and start looking for a new place. My friends were quite surprised when I told them there would be no wedding because they didn't suspect anything. And when I told them everything, they were shocked that I even managed to pull off such a story. Some think she deserved it, while others believe I went too far and should have just broken up with her the day I heard her joke. I'm sure when everyone finds out about her fake confession of love just to keep living with me rent-free and without contributing to the household at all, everyone will agree that she fully deserved what I did to her. Even if she manages to find a guy who'll let her move in after a couple of months, I doubt he will be as blind and charmed as I was and allow her to live off him. Though, who knows, maybe she will. I don't care anymore. I'm just glad she's gone and that I won't have to deal with her in the foreseeable future. Probably Bella realized that not every guy will turn a blind eye to her lifestyle, and not everyone will just agree to let her in and spend their money. unless she decides to find a sugar daddy, but that's a whole different story. Once, she somehow got another phone number and started texting me, trying to blackmail me into letting her come back. The tactic was, to say the least, unsuccessful. She tried to scare me, saying that if I don't let her stay until she finds a new boyfriend, she'll tell everyone that I used her connections in the modeling industry to help my rich cousin. I hope she understands that if she doesn't tell the whole truth, people will just think I acted like a good relative. And I really hope she's not naive enough to think she can say all kinds of crap about me and I'll just sit quietly. I told her that if she starts talking about me, I'll tell what she did too, and the truth will come out. Besides, she has quite an audience on social media, so it will hurt her way more than me. She hasn't replied yet, and I hope she won't, because I'm seriously fed up with her. But as if the messages weren't enough, today Bella showed up. At my work, the administrator called me because Bella refused to leave until she saw me. I had to take her to the nearest CAF to talk there and not embarrass myself in front of my colleagues because I immediately realized she was about to cause a scene. And that's exactly what happened. As soon as we sat down at the table, she started whining about how unfair I was to her and that she deserved a second chance no matter what. She wants to prove that under the right circumstances, she could be a good girlfriend. That surprised me a lot. I asked what she meant by the right circumstances because, as far as I knew, she already had ideal conditions. She lived completely stress-free and paid for nothing. And as it turned out, that's exactly what she meant by circumstances. She said I spoiled her outrageously by letting her walk all over me. If I had stood up to her more often, maybe she would have even felt more drawn to me. I was too weak-willed and average-looking. Plus, I had no self-esteem, so it was damn easy for her to boss me around without any guilt. And that's exactly why she said what she said, but now that she found out I was secretly making a fool out of her all this time, she suddenly started feeling attracted to me and, according to her, can now take me seriously as a potential boyfriend. I'm not making this up. Bella really said this out loud. I had a hard time holding back from telling her to fuck off while she said it because it was just absurd. I don't even know if this was her last desperate trick to get me back or if she really believed what she said, but it was damn funny. In the end, I just told her I'd think about what she said and get back to her later because I was barely holding back laughter. She even made me promise I'd talk to her when I got home. That's another reason why I'm glad we broke up. She always started acting cute and childish when she realized I was mad at her. No idea why. Maybe she thought if she pretended to be a little girl, it would make her more attractive in my eyes. In reality, it just caused disgust. I was too polite to tell her that. I got home half an hour ago. I just can't wrap my head around the fact that after everything that happened, she's still trying to come back just so she has somewhere to live. It's really pathetic. She was so lazy and dependent on a man that she can't even gather the last bits of pride and leave me alone. I'm not going to talk to her anymore and will make sure that next time she tries to contact me, she understands I don't even want to know her. It's been only a day since Bella showed up at my work. And today she called me again, this time from a friend's phone. I answered because I wanted to finally end everything. When she asked if I had thought about what she said, I replied that there's nothing to think about. Even if someone held a gun to my head and forced me to get back with her, I'd still refuse. I gave her a whole tirade and said everything that had been bothering me. I told her she was a pathetic loser I no longer want to deal with and that she better start looking for someone new to latch onto. Bella started arguing, claiming that the only reason I have a lot of money now is because I used her and her connections to get close to my rich cousin. So, apparently, I was the one who latched onto her. Son chose his stepfather over me and asked me to give up my parental rights. Everyone, I'm in a really tough spot with my son right now, and I deeply appreciate if you read this with care before commenting. My son just turned 17 a week ago, and this fall, he's supposed to start college. Our relationship has been strained ever since I decided to divorce his mother 2 years ago. No matter how hard I tried to repair things, nothing worked. He keeps pushing me away, and it's painfully heartbreaking. I've tried to stay close while I had the strength. He doesn't respond to my messages or calls, and when he does come over, he spends all his time in his room refusing to talk. The only time we communicate is at the dinner table, and even then, he keeps conversations to a minimum. Things with my ex-wife aren't great either, which I think is part of why my son seems to hate me so much now. I'm 44, my ex is 42. We We're married almost 20 years. Everything started falling apart after I lost my job a few years ago. I was suddenly fired and it shook our family. She's a teacher and always managed with her salary, which I admire, but she began resenting me, even though I was doing everything I could to find a new job. The pressure mounted. Arguments became daily, then we barely spoke unless absolutely necessary. Bitterness built and she filed for divorce. I didn't fight it. We were both exhausted, but she probably expected me to fight at least a little for our marriage. When I didn't, her hatred only deepened. During the divorce, she called me once, asking if I really planned to end it all. I told her, yes, everything we owned was divided evenly, no disputes, but our relationship was shattered. We had to work together for our son's sake, who struggled with our split. He didn't want us to divorce, and when it happened, he sided with his mother. It hurt deeply. After the divorce, we lived separately. My son naturally stayed with his mother, and I stayed with a friend. I think this is when she convinced him it was all my fault. She pulled him into our battles. It was cruel, but she wanted revenge, and she got it. 3 months ago, she married her colleague. I know him. He'd even visited our house a few times during her work gatherings. Everyone was shocked by their wedding, myself included. I don't know how long they'd been together or if she cheated, but at this point, it doesn't matter. What really hurt was seeing my son's posts about his new stepdad. They attended football games together, spent time together. Even on his birthday, which I wasn't invited to, he posted a picture with his mum and stepdad captioned, "Mum and Dad." It crushed me. I later organized a birthday for him, but he showed zero enthusiasm. He and his friends were in his room with the cake while I sat in the living room wondering what went wrong. That evening, after his friends left, my son said he wanted to discuss something serious. He told me he had thought a lot and decided he wants me to give up my parental rights so his stepdad can legally adopt him. He said he no longer feels any connection with me and prefers his new family, and he doesn't want me in his life anymore. I was stunned. At first, I wanted to argue, but quickly realized it wouldn't help. If he wants this new life, I can't force him otherwise. Heartbroken, I told him I would do whatever makes him happy. He thanked me and left the next day. The following days were the hardest. I couldn't make myself do anything, even skipped work for a few days. Everything felt meaningless. I had tried so hard to give him a good life, but he doesn't want that life from me at least. I spent days lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying not to break down. I had no idea how to fix things, or if they could even be fixed at all. I knew my ex-wife played a role in this, and I suspect she's happy that she completely severed my bond with my son. I also despised her new husband, not because he married the woman I once loved, but because he was taking my son away from me. But there was nothing I could do. Arguing with my son would only make things worse. All I could do was accept it and hope he might change his mind someday, and then a miracle happened. My son came back yesterday, but not for the reasons I had hoped. I thought maybe he finally realized that I'm his father. Perhaps his mother had brainwashed him, making him believe his stepdad would be a better father. But that wasn't the case. I hoped he'd understand how deeply I love him, and that love would make him reconsider. When he arrived, I was overjoyed, thinking he had changed his mind. But he looked extremely upset. When I asked what was wrong, he told me he didn't want me to give up my parental rights anymore because his stepdad said he couldn't afford his college tuition, so he had to come to me. There were no other options. His mother alone couldn't cover it all, so if he wanted to attend the college of his choice, he'd have to follow the custody agreement. He was heartbroken, and it cut me deeply. I never treated him badly, in fact, quite the opposite. I couldn't understand why he hated me so much. I hadn't done anything to deserve this hatred from my own son. It infuriated me that he despised me for no reason, except maybe because his mother had filled his head with lies. I have to admit she did a good job. I told him he didn't have to engage with me if he didn't want to, and that there are other ways to pay for college, get a job, apply for student loans. If he thinks I'm the worst father, then let him do what he needs to ensure his stepdad adopts him, because I don't want him to suffer any longer. Of course, I said it with heavy sarcasm, and he understood. He looked embarrassed, said nothing, and I just kept talking. It felt like years of bottled up frustration and hurt caused by my own son's hatred finally erupted. I told him I didn't divorce by choice, his mother wanted it. And the only reason she hates me so much is because I didn't fight for our marriage. I don't know what stories she fed him while he lived with her, but I can assure him that the divorce wasn't just my fault. He's only 17 and knows almost nothing about me or my life. If he believes everything his mother told him, he's in for an unpleasant surprise. I'm not his enemy and never wanted the divorce. But if she did, I wasn't going to cling to that relationship. I knew he was upset about the divorce, but I tried to make things as good as possible for him. Even when I lived separately, I came over for dinners, but he ignored me because his mother convinced him it was all my fault. Eventually, I ran out of patience, and my son was just stunned. He had nothing to say. I could see my words had touched him. He looked both shocked and guilty. He barely muttered, sorry, and returned to his mother. The next day, we didn't speak, and I felt terrible about what happened. I should have controlled my emotions, and I'm ashamed for raising my voice, even though he's only 17 and his mother manipulated him for 2 years. But I also feel it was cruel of him to say the only reason he came back was so I would pay for his education. That felt completely wrong, so maybe yelling was my fault, but I couldn't hold back. Before we go on, I invite you to drop your thoughts in the comments. Personally, I think he did the right thing. I've spent my life holding back emotions, never speaking up when hurt, and it backfired. People, unfortunately, don't see silence as virtue, they see it as weakness to exploit. Meanwhile, his mother sits comfortably and continues to manipulate him, telling him I'm to blame for everything that I left him, that I divorced her, and so on. It's cruel, but sometimes you have to stand up for yourself and speak your mind, even if it's uncomfortable. So, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments before we continue. Update 1. Hi everyone. I just want to say thank you for all the support and kind messages. It warms my heart to see so many single dads connecting with my story. Stay strong, guys. I also noticed many of you asked whether I ever suspected my ex-wife of cheating. Honestly, no. Even during the divorce, there was nothing that made me think she was unfaithful. Maybe there were signs, but I simply didn't notice them. And honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. Whether she cheated or not isn't important. I have all the proof I need that she's a terrible person, using our son just to hurt me. Regarding why I didn't try to have my son live with me during the first months after the divorce, I tried. I really did. But my son insisted he was more comfortable staying with his mother, and since he was still in school, I didn't want to create more problems for him or my friend who was hosting me at the time. I visited occasionally, but the environment was so hostile, thanks to my ex, that I couldn't stay long. Eventually, he began to resent me. I don't know what more I could have done to prevent it. I really tried to shield him from the divorce drama, but my wife made sure to pull him into it and make him hate me. By the time I realized her plan, it was too late. My son had already drifted too far from me. It's been a few days since I last spoke with him. We've been texting but haven't called or met. I haven't heard from my ex either, so I assume he didn't tell her I yelled at him. Usually, he would have complained immediately, causing a huge scene, but since he hasn't, maybe it means he's finally starting to change. I'm cautiously hopeful, just hoping he calls or comes over so we can have a proper conversation and start mending our relationship. Update 2. Today, my son finally visited me, and the meeting, let's just say, was intense. I won't pretend our relationship magically healed. That's not how it works. Fixing years of damage takes time and effort. But today was at least a first step, and I'm grateful for that. At first, he was awkward and uncomfortable, but he apologized for his behavior. He admitted that during our divorce, his mother told him I destroyed our family and didn't fight for it, and he believed her. He hadn't heard my side, and at 15, he just needed someone to blame. I was the easiest target. The situation worsened when his mother remarried. My son said it was entirely her idea to post pictures with his stepdad, pretending they were a happy family even though they weren't that close. She did it just to punish me for the divorce, hiding the fact that she filed for it. She even tried to make him believe he needed me to relinquish parental rights so his stepdad could officially adopt him, but she didn't discuss it with him. She just presented it as a fact. His stepdad was shocked and explained that while he enjoys spending time with him, he isn't ready to adopt because the bond isn't there yet, and he didn't want to pay for college if adoption happened. This upset my son deeply, leaving him frustrated and conflicted. It was a relief to finally talk and for him to start seeing the manipulation from his mother. It was an incredible day, and we managed to begin restoring our connection. I know rebuilding will take time, but this was a strong start. I told him I'm ready to forgive and start fresh, no matter what happened in the past. He promised to talk to his mother about the lies she's been telling him and even suggested family therapy so we can rebuild in a healthy way. I'm glad this is finally happening and even more satisfied knowing my ex will get what she deserves. She's a terrible person who doesn't deserve to be a mother. Harsh, maybe, but true. Using her son solely to hurt me proves it. I'm even considering seeking full custody, though of course I'll discuss it with him first. If he truly wants to stay with her, I won't force him, but I hope he sees her for who she really is and decides to stay with me. Author's note, she spent years manipulating and gaslighting our son just to make my life miserable. I can't even imagine being that heartless. Update 3, my son just texted me. He wants to come over and he asked me to pick him up from his mother's house. He said he has too many things to take the bus like usual. I'm in shock. I'm almost certain he's decided to move in with me. Everything happened so suddenly. I'm standing outside my ex's house waiting. He asked me to wait a few minutes. I can hear arguing inside, but I can't tell who's shouting at whom. I want to go in and bring him home immediately, but I can't without permission. I know she'll do everything possible to cause trouble, so I'm just waiting outside, hoping he comes out soon. Update 4, the shocking confrontation. He finally got home after an extremely long evening. I'm exhausted, but I feel I need to share what happened so I can process everything that went down today. As I mentioned earlier, I was waiting outside my ex's house because my son asked me to pick him up a few minutes after posting my last update. He finally came out. Even then, I could hear yelling from inside the house. My son looked furious as he walked to the car with his bags. Soon, I noticed my ex-wife storming out behind him. She was absolutely enraged, and the moment she saw me in the car, she came right up to the window and started screaming. It was terrifying, but I told her that if she didn't step back, I'd call the police. She did back off a little but didn't leave. As I helped my son load his things into the car, she continued shouting at me, claiming I had turned our son against her and calling me every name imaginable. I didn't care. I knew the truth, my son knew the truth, and that was all that mattered. She kept yelling even as we drove away, and suddenly, when we were just a few meters from her house, she threw a rock at the car, smashing my rear light. I pulled over a bit further and immediately called the police to report the incident. My son and I were in shock at her actions. I couldn't believe she would behave like this just because she'd been exposed. I filed a police report against her and returned home a few hours ago. My son had a complete nervous breakdown, and I could see how badly he was affected. Tomorrow, the first thing I'll do is take him to a therapist. I've also decided to file for full custody and a restraining order tomorrow because what happened today is completely unacceptable. I still hope her current husband realizes just how crazy the woman he's living with is and leaves while he still can. I also hope to secure full custody of my son and a restraining order against my ex as soon as possible. That's it for now. As you can see, things turned out to be even more complicated and intense than we imagined. Yet, the ending feels amazing. For me, because I finally got the chance to rebuild my relationship with my son, though gaining full custody was never something I expected this soon. We don't yet know if the court will grant full custody, but I believe there's a very good chance. My wife cheated on me with my business partner and left me for him, but later she faced a big disappointment. My ex-wife, Katie, 38, and I had been together for 19 years, 16 of those married. We also have a 14-year-old daughter. About 6 months ago, she left me to be with my business partner, now ex-partner, because he sold his share and quit after I found out about their affair. Leon used to be my colleague, and over time we became good friends, so we decided to quit our jobs and start our own company. We worked together for 5 years, and for 3 of those, he had been sleeping with my wife. I found out about it 6 months ago from Katie's phone messages. When I confronted her, she didn't even deny it. She admitted everything and said she was tired of hiding it. She told me she had long wanted to leave me. I was devastated. I had no idea she was unhappy in our marriage. If I had known, I would have done anything to fix it. The day I exposed her, she said she was leaving, but I still offered to try to make it work. A stupid move, but I was desperate. She became irritated and said she had only married me because she got pregnant by accident and didn't want to be alone. She claimed she had tried to love me for all those 16 years but couldn't, and now she had found a man she truly loved. She told me not to keep her locked up and that I should just accept it. It was incredibly painful, especially because of our daughter, but Katie didn't hesitate before leaving. She filed for divorce, asked for no alimony, and our asset split was fair. Within a couple of months, it was finalized. By that time, I had come to my senses and realized I couldn't be with her after what happened. I spoke to Leon, and he just apologized, saying he had wanted to tell me for a long time but didn't know how. A couple of weeks later, he quit and said they were moving away, partly because they didn't want to cause me problems, and partly because Katie had been offered a great job in Boston. His cousin also lived there, so he could work with him. He wrote all this in a letter, and I never spoke to either of them again. The last time I saw Katie was 2 months ago, on the day our divorce was finalized. It was hard for my daughter and me, but we managed. At least I still had the business to focus on. I wanted to give my daughter the future she deserved. Then, about a week ago, Katie suddenly showed up again, and I'm still not sure if my daughter and I reacted the right way. It was around PM, someone was banging on the door and ringing the bell nonstop. My daughter was already asleep, and I was finishing work in my office. We both rushed to the door, and when I looked through the window, I saw it was Katie. My daughter asked me not to open it. She's still very hurt by her mother. Even though Katie has partial custody, she hasn't made a single attempt to reconnect, and after the cheating, my daughter's attitude toward her only got worse, but I figured if Katie came at that hour, it must be serious. I opened the door, but instead of coming in, she immediately started yelling that she would sue me and take everything she was owed. She shouted that she couldn't believe I had chosen to punish her so cruelly. At first, I had no idea what she was talking about. I asked her to calm down and explain. She accused me of deliberately not telling her about Leon's true nature to get back at her for the affair. Then she rolled up her sleeve to show me a spot on her arm with a bandage. I instantly understood that Leon must have done something, which shocked me. I had worked with him for years and never once saw him raise his voice at anyone. Katie explained that since moving to Boston, they had been constantly fighting. She thought he was just adjusting to the new life, but after a month, he was still acting like it was all her fault. He kept blaming her for ruining his life, making him leave the business, forcing him to work for a cousin who belittled him, and telling me about their affair before he was ready. They fought every night. During one argument, he finally snapped and threw a vase at her. She tried to dodge it, but it still hit her arm and cut her. Before that, it was only verbal insults. Now it had escalated. She left the house immediately and got the next flight to see me. Leon didn't even try to contact or apologize afterward. She told me it was all my fault, that I must have known about his aggression and kept it secret to punish her. She claimed it was cruel since she had done me a favor by asking for nothing in the divorce, and I hadn't bothered to protect her. That was absurd. Yes, I had worked with Leon for years, but only in a professional setting. I didn't know what he was like in relationships. I'd only met the women he dated a couple of times. I had no way of knowing this side of him. Her accusations were nonsense, and it infuriated me that she acted like I owed her anything. I told her I had no idea and that I was sorry for what happened, but in the end, she had put herself in that situation. She could threaten me with court, all she wanted, but deep down she knew I had nothing to do with it. My daughter had been standing by the door the whole time, and I'd almost forgotten she was there because I was so caught up in the argument. When the conversation started going in circles, my daughter interrupted and told Katie to leave. I was surprised she spoke up. Apparently, Katie was too, but then Katie snapped at her to shut up and mind her own business because she was too young to understand and ordered her to go to bed. My daughter refused. She stood her ground and told Katie she had no right to speak to me like that, especially after everything she had done to me. She reminded her that I had been broken. For months after the affair, while Katie selfishly moved on with her new life. She also reminded her that she hadn't even tried to visit or keep in touch because she was too busy with Leon. Then my daughter told Katie she had failed both as a wife and as a mother, and she had no right to stand there acting like a victim in a situation she had created herself. My daughter is only 14, but after hearing all this, I truly realized just how much she has matured because of the divorce. Katie had nothing to say in response, and then my daughter delivered her final words. Since Katie left and is now with Leon, she should deal with everything happening to her on her own, because we are no longer her family. She dug her own grave. so now she can lie in it. That's exactly what she deserves for ruining the lives of the people closest to her. After saying that, my daughter slammed the door in Katie's face and went to her room. I heard Katie crying outside, but I didn't even go to check on her after everything that happened between us. There was no need. I just went to bed and tried not to think about it over the next couple of days, focusing on work. I was very proud of my daughter for taking my side and not letting me break down in front of Katie. After that visit, things seemed to be going fine until 3 days ago when Katie showed up again, this time with a lawyer demanding full custody of our daughter. Thankfully, my daughter was with her friends that evening, so I didn't have to tell her anything yet. But I was furious when Katie said that after the way my daughter spoke to her last time, she had decided she would no longer allow her to live with me. She claimed that the real reason she didn't try to maintain contact with our daughter after I found out about the affair was because she didn't want to get dragged into a long custody battle and make my life even harder. She said she wanted to leave quietly and not try to contact our daughter because she supposedly knew I was on edge back then and her involvement in our daughter's life would have only made things worse. So basically, she was trying to say that she did all this for me and not just because she wanted to run away from responsibility. Naturally, I didn't believe her and told her straight out, I know perfectly well that the only reason you didn't fight for anything during the divorce, especially custody, was because you wanted to leave as quickly as possible and start a new life with Leon. It had nothing to do with me, no matter how you try to spin it. I have nothing to feel guilty about, but Katie said she didn't care what I thought because now she wanted full custody of our daughter and she was determined to get it. She said she wouldn't let me destroy our daughter's perception of her mother by filling her head with nonsense and disrespect toward her. According to her, during our last meeting, our daughter behaved in an extremely disrespectful way toward her, and instead of intervening, I encouraged it. So now she knew what to do and came to tell me she would be taking me to court. I just said, go right ahead, and slammed the door because I didn't want to talk to her or waste any more of my time. But now I'm starting to wonder, what if she's right about something? I want to believe I'm doing the right thing, but honestly, right now, I'm not sure about anything anymore. Update 1, I've decided I have absolutely nothing to apologize for. My daughter did exactly the right thing by taking my side, and the comments helped me realize how foolish I had been acting. Katie cheated on me. I don't think I owe her either sympathy or pity for what's happened to her. Many people in the comments suggested I should talk to my daughter in advance in case Katie decides to go for full custody, so it wouldn't come as a shock to her, especially after our last encounter. So yesterday I talked to my daughter and told her everything. I didn't want to hide anything from her. She has already proven she's mature enough to handle it. Yes, I do feel a little sad that she had to grow up so quickly, but at least now I can prepare her for what's ahead. So far, we haven't heard anything from Katie, but we're expecting that to change soon. My daughter is 14, and that's old enough for her opinion to be taken into account in court if it even gets that far. It would be better to resolve everything through mediation, but just in case, I wanted to make sure she truly wanted to stay with me, and she obviously does. She made it crystal clear she doesn't want anything to do with Katie, at least for now. She said that maybe in the future she'll think about reconnecting with her mother, but right now the pain is too fresh. She clearly blames her mother for destroying our family, and I can't deny that. I don't want to be the kind of father who turns a child against their mother out of spite, but in this case, I really didn't have to do anything. Katie managed that herself. Now my daughter just doesn't want to talk to her, even though they used to be quite close. This is a sharp and painful break for my daughter. It's clear Katie is angry that my daughter is on my side, especially since she always tried to be closer to her. By the way, many people asked who told my daughter about the affair. Well, it wasn't me, it was Katie herself. She wrote about it in a letter to our daughter just a couple of days after moving out, without even asking me if I agreed to that. My daughter was very upset when she learned the truth, but despite everything, she still wanted to talk to her mother at least once. But it was Katie who refused. When I tried to contact her to tell her our daughter wanted to talk and discuss what had happened, Katie said she didn't want to because she was too busy with the divorce process, and besides, she thought it wasn't something worth discussing. Everything she wanted to say was in that letter, and she supposedly had nothing to add. I tried to convince her to have at least one conversation with our daughter because it was clear she had a lot of questions. But Katie was adamant. After that, she cut off contact with us completely. So my daughter's view of her mother changed dramatically, and in my opinion, it's unfair for Katie to blame me for that. In any case, I spoke with my lawyer and we will be ready. Update 2: a couple of days ago, I finally received the summons from Katie regarding full custody. My lawyer and I immediately filed a response. Tomorrow, we have a court-appointed mediation meeting scheduled. Today, I got a call from Leon. I was pretty surprised. We had no reason to talk, but I answered anyway. As soon as I picked up, he said he wanted me to give Katie back to him. He told me he'd been trying to reach her for the past couple of days and was sure she must be with me, or at least had spoken to me. He wanted me to tell her that he was looking for her. I told him I didn't know where she was living now, but yes, we had spoken in the last few days, and she was here to fight for custody of our daughter. I didn't say this for Leon's sake. My thought was, what if talking to him could make her change her mind and convince her to come back to him? Ideally, maybe he could even persuade her to give up her parental rights altogether. With that in mind, I told him everything. I also added that she had been very upset that he hadn't tried to contact her after that night, and if he really wanted her back, he should hurry. Poor guy didn't even suspect they were manipulating him, so everything worked out quite well. I just hoped that Kathy still wanted to be with him and that when he showed up, she would decide to go back to him. I told my lawyer about this plan, and even he thinks I did the right thing because, although the situation was already turning in our favor, saving time and nerves never hurts, especially if it helps settle the case before trial. Update 3. So, 2 days ago, Kathy and I had our first mediation session, and of course, nothing went according to plan. She didn't agree to any of our terms and said it was all a waste of time. Then she ended the meeting in less than half an hour. After she left, I picked up my daughter from school, and when we got home, Leon was already waiting on the porch. He looked absolutely awful, and I could easily imagine how he got to such a state after a couple of months with Kathy. I told him to leave because my daughter and I had just come home and wanted to relax. We had neither the strength nor the desire to deal with another drama. I had already done everything I could for him. I wasn't going to go out of my way for a guy who was messing around with my wife behind my back, but he just broke down crying and said that after their last fight, Kathy hadn't replied to a single message from him and he didn't know where to find her. I told him I still didn't know where she lived and couldn't help. He just sat on the porch steps and cried, covering his face with his hands. At that moment, all this drama really started to annoy me. This guy, together with Kathy, destroyed my life, and now he feels comfortable enough to ask me to help him find her so they can make up. I told my daughter to go inside so I could deal with this myself. When she left, I told Leon it was time for him to go because I was fed up with both of them. Just in case, I gave him Kathy's parents' contacts and said if he couldn't reach her, he should call them and leave us alone. I told him that he and Kathy had ruined my life, and I didn't want to see him hanging around my house anymore. He tried to apologize and said he didn't want to hurt me but had fallen in love with her and couldn't help himself. I didn't want to hear it, didn't say anything, and he left. I constantly feel lost and don't understand what's happening in my life. I truly hope and pray that Leon and Kathy can sort things out, because if they do, maybe they'll finally leave me and my daughter alone and I can start living peacefully again. At the moment, I don't understand what's going on, or what I feel, mostly nothing. I can't wait for all this to finally end. Update 4. A couple of days ago, Kathy officially ended our mediation sessions and said she wants the case to go to court. That's going to end badly for her, and we all know it, but apparently it's only now starting to sink in for her. Anyway, a few hours ago she came to me with Leon. It seems they managed to work things out between themselves. I didn't let her in because my daughter was home and feeling unwell, and I didn't want to make it worse, so I told them to wait at a nearby CAF. I called my mum to sit with my daughter, and I went to them. When I arrived, Kathy and Leon apologized for everything they put me through, and again, I had to explain that I didn't care anymore. I just want them to go their own way and get to the point. Why did they even call me? I wasn't going to waste time on fake apologies and nonsense. So they got to the point, they admitted they messed up and realized they really don't like Boston. Kathy missed our daughter a lot, and Leon missed feeling like he was his own boss. Now Kathy wanted me to agree to let our daughter visit her every weekend, or at least every other weekend, because she doesn't want to lose the life she had. Leon pulled off a real surprise. He wants to become my business partner again and open a branch in Boston. The best part is that they want me to decide within a couple of days because Kathy and her employers said that if she wants to keep her job, she needs to go back to remote work. She can't continue otherwise. Even if I wanted to think about it, I wouldn't have time. So I just said no to all of it. Leon already quit and sold his share, so I wasn't going to take him back. I don't trust him at all. Kathy's proposal is just absurd. Our daughter shouldn't be shuttled back and forth every weekend just to see her mother. That should have been thought through before moving to Boston. This is not my fault at all. They started arguing with me, saying they were ready to compromise because they didn't want to take it to court. I told them that the very thought that they might achieve something and even win in court sounds ridiculous. The only reason they came to negotiate with me in person was to try to pressure me. Unfortunately for them, I'm not weak or stupid enough to fall for that. The only reason I agreed to meet was that I wanted to put an end to this whole story. My words immediately cooled their ardor because even they understood that if it went to court, they didn't stand a chance. I said the most I could do was talk to my daughter and try to convince her to at least meet with her mother when she visits. But that's it, nothing more. So either they accept my offer or they can get lost. I'm done wasting my time on them. Kathy looked pretty desperate and quickly agreed. I left and will talk to my daughter when she feels better, but I'm not going to force her to do what she doesn't want. If she decides she doesn't want to see her mother anymore, that will be her decision. I definitely won't try to convince her otherwise. Update 5. Hey, a couple of months have passed. In the last update, I said I wasn't going to force my daughter to meet her mother if she didn't want to. After that update, I talked to my daughter, told her what Kathy said, and she replied that she needed some time to think it over. I passed that info to Kathy a couple of months ago, and since then we haven't spoken. I don't know if she and Leon managed to fix their issues, honestly. I don't care. But as far as I know, they're still together and living in Boston. Well, let them live. The main thing is they left me alone, and now I can finally try to build my life anew. That's exactly what I'm doing now. The best revenge is to live well. So I'm just focused on work and on raising my daughter to be a good person, not like her mother. I hope I succeed. My wealthy parents humiliated me all my life and kicked me out of the house. Now that I have a successful business, they suddenly reached out. I'm 27 years old, and a year ago I started my own business with a couple of friends from college. Financially, we're doing great now, and we are already making a profit. A few days ago, my parents, both 54 years old with whom I haven't spoken since college ended, suddenly contacted me and offered to become partners in my business because they wanted to invest. I refused. I didn't discuss it with my friends because everyone knew I had bad relations with my parents, and under no circumstances did I want to involve them in our business. My parents always neglected and bullied me as a child, which was, to put it mildly, strange since I was the kind of kid parents usually take pride in. Both are well off. My dad is a dental surgeon. My mum is a financial director of a company. I grew up in a family of achievers and was naturally very ambitious from early childhood. But for some reason, my parents never supported me and constantly mocked me for being a nerd. They had plenty of money, but barely met even my basic needs. I had no idea why they hated me until I realized they indirectly blamed me for not achieving the success they dreamed of. They were quite successful but never became famous as they wanted. I found out about this when I was 16 after complaining to my aunt, the youngest sister of my father, now 46, the only person who understood me. She told me the truth about my parents' unreasonable hatred, thinking I was old enough to know. My parents blamed me for the time and money they spent raising me, thinking that if they had invested those resources into their careers, they'd have achieved much more. They had a child under pressure from relatives and didn't really want kids. Since I appeared, they had to put up with me somehow, and they chose bullying and constant humiliation. As a child, I was deprived of a lot, even though they paid for everything. There was no real help from them, not with small things like homework or projects, nor with serious problems like school conflicts. If I asked about something unnecessary, they just brushed me off or worse, mocked me. They mocked my appearance because I was skinny and looked like a typical nerd. They laughed at my interest in computers and said I'd amount to nothing more than an IT guy. That was my ceiling, so investing money in me was a waste. They emotionally ignored me. I got used to such insults from childhood and didn't see anything strange about it then. I thought it was my fault. That's why my parents didn't love me as they should. It was pretty awful, but for me, it was normal. In my teenage years, I started to protest a little against their harsh attitude. But my father quickly suppressed this by threatening to throw me out onto the street if I didn't calm down. So instead of open protest, I vented to my aunt, who asked me 1,000 times if I wanted her to report our family situation to social services, but I always said no because I was afraid of the consequences. My aunt couldn't adopt me, and I didn't want to be a burden, so I chose to suffer at my parents' house. When it got really bad, I talked to my aunt, and it helped. When I finally understood the reason behind my parents' behavior, I decided to disappear from their lives right after college graduation since they didn't care about me. They sent me to a public school. Sorry if this sounds arrogant, but I think it was a waste of my potential. Anyway, it was a clear sign that they didn't care about my education or me in general. However, I still had some expectations from them, which completely collapsed when they announced that after I finished school and turned 18, there would be no place for me in their house until I achieved some success on my own. Moreover, they refused to pay for my college education. I completely lost it and told them they couldn't treat me like that because I knew I had a great future. I had been an excellent student all my life, and if they threw me out right before college started, my future would be at risk, but they stood their ground and said, "You have no future. Stop overestimating yourself." Then they added that I shouldn't hope for a bright future because teachers and friends mistakenly convinced me that I was a genius, while the best I could do was be a regular IT guy fixing computers for idiots. In offices, honestly, it was complete nonsense because even those supposedly worthless IT guys have deep knowledge and deserve respect, but my stupid, awful parents would never understand that. I tried to convince them to at least pay for my education. Housing could be figured out later, but they were adamant. So, a few weeks before my 18th birthday, I ran away from home and went to my aunt's. I applied for scholarships to many colleges, and my aunt kept trying to persuade my parents to help me, but it was useless. In the end, we decided I would go to the college that gave me the biggest discount. Luckily, I got accepted to a college with a scholarship covering 80% of the tuition and a good computer science program, which suited me. My aunt decided to pay the rest. She worked in sales and didn't earn much compared to my parents, but still agreed to help. Plus, thanks to the scholarship, the education was relatively affordable. I lived in a dorm and visited my aunt when she was home. She often went on business trips. That's how I spent my student years. My life improved significantly when I left my parents' house. Constant anxiety and worries disappeared. I became happier and found it easier to make friends. That's how I met my current friends and business partners, with whom we eventually started our own ID company. Now we're doing relatively well. I thought my parents wouldn't care what I was doing because there were issues even back when I was in school. However, when they found out I was graduating college as the valedictorian, they decided to come to the graduation ceremony. Of course, they couldn't get inside because I didn't buy tickets for them and didn't invite them. Since we hadn't been in contact, we met after the ceremony, and I was shocked to see them there with my aunt, who looked just as irritated as I was. I had plans to go out drinking with friends, but instead, I spent the next 2 hours in a hotel room with my parents, arguing and fighting. They were furious that I hadn't invited them to the graduation but had invited my aunt, and they demanded an explanation. It was ironic, considering they kicked me out when I was 18 and refused to pay for my education, even though they had the means, given all the cruel treatment in my childhood and the emotional problems that still affect my adult life. I felt they didn't deserve any explanations. But I didn't want them to cause a scene in front of everyone, so I walked them to the hotel. There, I finally lost it and told them exactly what I thought of them. I told them I never wanted to see them again, and that if they tried to contact me again, I would get a restraining order or something similar. Then I left the hotel and went to meet my friends. I wasn't going to let my parents ruin my happy day. After that, we never spoke again. Later, I learned from my aunt that my parents were disappointed and angry and even discussed disinheriting me. That didn't change anything since I never expected to get anything from them. That's where it ended. Almost 7 years passed and we hadn't talked. Then, a few days ago, they suddenly called. They asked my aunt for my number, saying they wanted to apologize. She gave them my number. She was going to warn me, but forgot. I understand, she's been busy lately, so it's okay, I don't hold it against her. But I didn't hear any apologies. My parents immediately moved on to a business proposal because now investing in me was profitable. Naturally, I refused, hung up, and blocked them. Then I told my friends about it. They didn't mind that I refused without consulting them since they knew my whole history with my parents. I didn't know what to expect next, but the very next day my parents struck back. They tagged me and all my friends in a sarcastic Facebook post, claiming I wasn't the independent computer genius I thought I was, but just a guy who achieved moderate business success using daddy's money. Now, supposedly, I refuse to acknowledge the help they supposedly gave me all these years. I was completely shocked by the post and almost called them to tell them off. But before doing that, I decided to respond with something I had kept for years. I had a few old videos recorded during my teenage years when I lived with them, documenting everyday life just in case I'd ever need proof in court of how terrible parents they were. I never posted them because I didn't want anything to do with them. And I was sure that if I uploaded videos showing them being rude, mocking, and treating me like dirt, it would definitely have consequences. Back then, I just didn't want extra drama, so I did nothing. However, their Facebook post changed everything. And I finally posted those videos. Here comes the moment where I might have acted like a fucking asshole. I wrote a long post on Instagram explaining the whole story of my relationship with my parents and shared those videos exposing them. After that, I called my lawyer and explained everything. But she was already ahead of me and started preparing documents to sue my parents for defamation. She was also going to contact my partners to see if they agreed with the lawsuit since their names were mentioned in my parents' Facebook post. Under my parents' post, several relatives and friends of theirs commented, saying it was great that I was finally exposed and that they would never do business with us. So there was definitely a basis for the lawsuit. I sent screenshots to my lawyer and informed my partners to keep them updated. Once all this was done, I expected my parents to call begging for forgiveness, and indeed, they called demanding apologies and claiming that I messed up by posting those videos. Their argument was that they posted their accusations on private Facebook accounts, so only a limited number of people saw them, while I made my post on a public profile seen by many more people. Considering my followers, they demanded I immediately delete the post because people had already started sending them insults and even threats. This could ruin their careers since they looked terrible in the videos, and if their employers saw them, it would be the end. I lost my temper a little and told them they got what they deserved, then hung up. Still, I archived my post and turned off my phone for a while. When I checked my phone again a few hours later, I saw a letter from my parents. They apologized for everything that happened in the past, but emphasized that my revenge was terrible. Moreover, I posted personal videos featuring them without their consent, which, according to them, gave them grounds to sue me as well. Obviously, they were already served with a defamation lawsuit. They said I must withdraw it. Well, they would not hesitate to publicize my unethical behavior, which would negatively affect my business. I discussed this with my partners, and they believe we have no reason to back down because I did the right thing, unlike my parents, who lied and deliberately distorted facts to make me look like a liar and lose credibility. Their point might sound reasonable, but for some reason, I still feel guilty continuing with the case since my parents apologized in the letter. I understand this lawsuit will bring negativity to all sides, one way or another. I don't know what to do next. Tell me, am I wrong for suing my parents for defamation even after they apologized? Update 1. Hello everyone. So, I've decided to continue the lawsuit for several reasons. First of all, this decision was made not only by me, but also by my friends and business partners. Although their post got wide exposure like mine, I'm sure many people saw it and this could seriously harm our business. Also, it was clear that my parents' goal was to ruin my reputation and that of my company to satisfy their ego by destroying the work of my life. So, the defamation accusations are well founded. Second, their apologies are worth absolutely nothing because they only said them when their own careers were threatened. They weren't sincere and apologized only for their own benefit. I never stood up to my parents my whole life because I was afraid of them. Even now, almost 30 years old, I'm still scared to go against them. This fear has become like a part of me. It's so deeply rooted that I didn't even realize it until you pointed out in the comments how many times I had chances to tell people the truth about my parents but stayed silent because I feared the consequences, but now I realize nothing threatens me anymore. I have all the power now and they can no longer hurt me. I will sue them despite their fake apologies. Let's see how this ends. One thing I'm sure of, I will make them pay. I'm tired of being the good guy, especially with people who don't deserve it at all. My parents treated me cruelly, and no child deserves such a childhood. And now that I have the chance to get revenge on them, I will do it. Until now, I stayed above all this, but I see no reason to act like that anymore when they keep attacking me just to get attention. It's disgusting, and I'm not going to tolerate it anymore. Update 2 today, my aunt contacted me to check what I decided about the situation with my parents. I told her we're continuing the lawsuit. She was happy with my decision and said she's proud of me. She also apologized for not doing enough for me in childhood, though honestly, I don't blame her. At that time, she was just starting her career and couldn't fully take care of me. But when it was needed, she stepped in and helped, and I will always be grateful to her. My grandparents and other relatives literally idolized my parents, so no one would believe me if I told them how my parents really treated me. Even if my aunt had gone to social services, I might have ended up in foster care or worse. I'm not saying she's perfect, but I feel the need to protect her now when many criticize the only person who ever stood up for me and supported me with all her might. That's all. I haven't communicated with my parents since their last letter, and they probably still expect me to withdraw the lawsuit. It's been 4 days, and we decided to first try to negotiate through a court-appointed mediator. If needed, we'll go to court, but for now, we want to settle out of court. My parents have money quite a lot, so I have no reason to blame myself. They fucked up, so they have to pay. I don't know what's going on with their jobs now, because after I posted those videos, they started freaking out, accusing me of threatening their careers. It's hard to believe how much manipulation and drama was in their calls and letters. Luckily, I didn't fall for it, otherwise, that would have been very sad. They tried to make my actions look as bad as theirs or worse. They spread false rumors about me, and I only responded by exposing the truth to everyone. Honestly, I really want to retrieve those videos from the archive after negotiations, because my parents truly deserve to be exposed, and the whole world should see their true face. Update 3 today, the court approved a mediator for our negotiations and notified us. My parents called me, and I temporarily unblocked their number to ask when exactly I'm going to withdraw the lawsuit, since the situation is getting out of control. I told them that it's not going to happen, and they literally lost it. They started screaming incoherently. I barely understood what they were trying to say. One thing was obvious, they were furious. There was a lot of meaningless yelling, and I just hung up. But they immediately called back. This time, my father said I really pissed him off and that these tricks don't scare him at all. I stood my ground and finally told them everything I think about them. It was harsh but absolutely necessary. After that call, I felt huge relief. After saying everything, I just hung up without giving them a chance to argue more. But they didn't back down, and after that, they called my aunt and told her I'm suing them without any grounds, which is absolutely not true. They tried to manipulate her feelings to make her pity them and convince me to stop the process. However, my aunt is not so easy to break. Besides, my parents often use the argument, but we're family, he should still work with us. So she told them exactly what I asked her to say, that she could express sympathy but nothing more. If they keep calling her, they'll lose even that sympathy, and she will report them to the police for harassment. That was cool of her. After that, I didn't hear from my parents for several hours until the evening. It turned out that when they couldn't turn my aunt to their side, they contacted almost all relatives, telling them I'm suing without reason. In the end, all relatives started sending me the same message. It was a poorly executed idea, because it became obvious my parents sent everyone the exact same template message without even changing it a bit. Most just forwarded it word for word. It was clear my parents coached them, hoping to make me change my mind. Honestly, it's even sad how desperately they're trying to fix the situation, knowing it's hopeless. Update 4, the court case officially started. We're currently on a break. I just had lunch and am writing this post sitting in the hall. My parents were spitting venom, but it's obvious they're losing. If they want to avoid a full trial, they'll have to agree to our terms. When we went on the lunch break, my father was staring daggers at me, and my mother tried to comfort him by pretending to be a helpless woman, but no one bought it because we all understood it was just an act. My friends and business partners are incredibly supportive and stand by me at every stage of this process, and I'm very grateful to them. Even now, one of my friends said if after all this I want to talk, he's always there because he understands how emotionally hard this is for me. I'm sincerely thankful that despite my terrible parents, I have wonderful friends and a loving aunt. I really appreciate everything I have. My sister dumped her kids on me because of an emergency, but through social media I found out she just went to a wedding and her new boyfriend doesn't even know she has children. My sister, let's call her Miranda, has always been a source of stress for me. We've never gotten along. She's manipulative and tends to display narcissistic traits. The thing is, Miranda was born prematurely, and that caused our parents to be overly anxious and protective of her. Unfortunately, because of that, I often felt forgotten. Our parents would miss my school plays or basketball games and even forget to pick me up from events. One of the most painful recurring issues was birthday presents. Miranda always got cute, thoughtful gifts that made her happy. I would get books or stuffed bears I didn't even like. It was a constant reminder that my sister was the favorite. Dealing with my parents' unfairness wasn't easy, but my sister took things to another level, enjoying their favoritism and using it against me. For example, one time she ripped my dress while I was sleeping just because the boy she liked had asked me out instead of her. I was devastated and couldn't stop crying because I loved that dress. When I told our parents, they scolded her, but Miranda immediately played the victim, crying and claiming that she liked him first and that I was doing this on purpose because I hated her. To my horror, my parents comforted her after her dramatic story and told me to avoid boys she liked so I wouldn't hurt her feelings. It was unbelievably unfair. It wasn't my fault he had chosen to ask me out. Another time, I had been begging our parents for a trip to Six Flags for my birthday, but Miranda found out and decided she wanted to go for her birthday too. Since hers was earlier than mine, our parents agreed to take her. She didn't even go on half the rides. I knew she chose that destination just to spite me. For my birthday, instead of going to Six Flags, they took me to the same restaurant we always went to. I was upset, but they told me there was no point. Going to Six Flags twice in 1 year. As we got older, Miranda treated me even worse. She constantly gave me backhanded compliments like, "Your face looks better with glasses," or "You like that guy. Oh, I thought you were into girls." During my teen years, I tried to stay out of the spotlight. Unlike me, Miranda was everyone's darling. In public, she seemed kind and helpful, but in private, she was my worst nightmare. Sometimes she'd be nice, but only if she wanted something from me. Once she got it, she'd go back to ignoring or mocking me. Miranda made me feel insecure not only about my appearance, but also about the guys I dated. When I was 17, I had my first boyfriend, but Miranda planted doubts in my head. She told me he was too good looking for me and would leave me soon anyway, so I might as well break up with him first. Whenever he came over, Miranda would flirt with him standing too close, touching his arm, laughing loudly and unnaturally. Of course, this made him uncomfortable. After months of her potting doubts in my head, I broke up with him. Looking back now, I realized that was a mistake. He actually seemed like a genuinely good person. After high school, I moved to another state to study engineering in college. During holidays, I'd come home and the snide, cutting comments from Miranda were still there. The toxic atmosphere never went away. At T25, Miranda met her future husband, Dave. 2 years later, they decided to get married. She announced her engagement, surprising everyone. We knew she had been dating other guys on the side. Still, we were happy. She seemed ready to settle down with a decent man. Miranda asked me to be her maid of honor. My parents were thrilled, but I felt the complete opposite. I knew it wouldn't be easy, and I was right. Miranda used the role to control and manipulate me. She regularly threatened to demote me or remove me as maid of honor if I did anything she didn't like. Whenever she asked my opinion, I answered honestly, but every time she'd get angry, blame me, and throw tantrums. Because of her aggressive reactions, I eventually stopped saying anything to avoid provoking another fight. I preferred to keep the peace rather than endure her verbal attacks. Once, over lunch, I simply asked if the maid of honor would have a special dress just to understand her vision better. She immediately accused me of wanting to be the center of attention. Later, the conversation shifted to guest accommodations. My mum suggested booking an Airbnb early, and I agreed. Miranda exploded, saying she'd already discussed it with her fiancé and they'd be booking hotel rooms. She kept yelling at me, saying I was stupid and that as her maid of honor I worked for her and should consult her before agreeing with anyone else's ideas. I stayed quiet to avoid making things worse, but she went on to accuse me of having a bad attitude. Mum tried to step in, but Miranda interrupted her, saying she was tired of dealing with such an immature maid of honor and that I needed to grow up. When we finally left, she kept yelling at me for another 10 minutes in the parking lot, repeating the same accusations. I just wanted to run away, but my car was a 20-minute walk away, so she had to give me a ride. The wedding day finally came. The ceremony itself went relatively smoothly, but even then, Miranda kept finding petty reasons to pick fights with me. At the reception, she openly yelled at me in front of everyone, creating a tense atmosphere. I caught her glaring at me between events. She complained about the music, the way drinks were served, and anything else she could criticize. When it was my turn to give a speech, I stood up hoping to say something warm and heartfelt. But Miranda made a hand gesture telling me to wrap it up quickly. Later, she accused me of mentioning her childhood in my speech and claimed I was deliberately trying to make her look bad in front of her new family. I was crushed because everyone else seemed to like my speech. Even our parents had no complaints. The next morning, when the chaos had settled, I realized just how much anxiety I had been living with for the past several months, and the cause was Miranda. I finally understood that she had been my main problem my entire life. I regret not having the courage to refuse to participate in the wedding, but I knew my family would have blamed me. When that nightmare was finally over, I could fully focus on my career. A few months later, I met my current boyfriend, Tom. We started dating, and a year later, we decided to move in together. My parents were happy for us. My sister, however, voiced her disapproval, saying Tom seemed too boring and was just some typical computer nerd. In reality, Tom worked in IT and made 3 times more than I did. Miranda didn't know that, and honestly, I didn't care. I was happy with him, and my sister's opinion didn't matter to me. One day, my life suddenly changed when my sister announced at a family dinner that she was pregnant. If you're wondering how this affected me, well, immediately after, she said she couldn't wait to see me become an aunt because she was really going to need my help during this difficult time. Her words shocked me. She was an adult, about to have a baby, yet instead of asking her husband or our parents for help, she somehow decided I would be the one taking care of her child. You have to understand, I'd never had kids in my life and had zero experience with them. I always felt uncomfortable around children and had no desire to interact with them. I was perfectly fine not having kids yet, so what she said genuinely frightened me. In that moment, I felt cornered. I knew my sister would find a way to make me babysit, especially since I worked remotely and it would be convenient for her to drop off the baby at my place anytime. My sister had no boundaries whenever I tried to set any. Our parents would immediately rush to her defense. When her first child was born, I occasionally watched him. At first, it wasn't too bad. Her husband worked night shifts, she worked during the day, and I just needed to let him sleep a bit. I was never left completely alone with the baby, and I only started babysitting when he was already 6 months old, which was a bit easier. Unfortunately, over time, it became more frequent. I was asked to watch the baby more and more often, and my sister constantly criticized my childcare methods. I could be peacefully working when suddenly I'd get a call from her or my mum asking about my weekend plans. If I said I had none, I'd simply be told I was going to my sister's to give her a break, and that was the end of the discussion. Over time, it started to feel like I had a second job, one I wasn't being paid for. You'd think she'd at least be grateful for my help, but no. Every time I came home, she'd call our mum and complain I had done something wrong, changed the diaper incorrectly, fed the baby the wrong way, nitpicking over the smallest things. It drove me crazy because I was doing her a favor. Now, you can see just how manipulative she was. We clearly weren't close, and she should have been grateful I helped her at all. Instead, she smiled to my face while undermining our relationship behind my back. Eventually, I got truly angry. It started affecting my mental health, and Tom noticed. One evening, we had an honest conversation, and I vented everything. He convinced me to finally stand up to my family. The next time they called asking me to babysit, I flatly refused. Miranda and Mum called repeatedly, pleading for me to do it for the family, but I stood my ground and told them to go to hell. I felt I had already done more than I should, and I wanted nothing to do with my sister or her child anymore. I cut off all contact with Miranda. She showed up at my house when I wouldn't answer her calls, but I refused to open the door. My parents also tried to pressure me into forgiving her, but eventually they gave up, realizing I wouldn't budge. I occasionally spoke to my parents, but that was it. This went on for 2 years. During that time, Miranda had a second child with Dave. Last year, my mum called to tell me that Miranda and Dave were getting divorced. It was quite unexpected. Even though I didn't want anything to do with my sister, I was still surprised. When I asked my mum for details, it turned out Miranda had been sleeping with her co-workers. Apparently, Dave had found intimate messages on her second phone, the one she always hid from him. He gathered evidence and filed for divorce. For Miranda, it was a total shock because Dave handed her the divorce papers immediately. When she tried to explain herself, he told her he knew everything. She begged him to forgive her, but he walked away. I was stunned by this turn of events. Although looking back now, I realized Dave was far too good for her. In a way, I'm glad he escaped that nightmare. After the divorce, Miranda had to move back in with our parents. I heard from them that she'd be out all night, coming home in the morning drunk and reeking of alcohol. Eventually, she was fired from her job because she was constantly late. That only made her drink even more while she was out having fun. My parents were forced to take care of her kids. This went on for months. Unlike her life, mine was going wonderfully. Tom and I got a dog, bought a house, and gradually moved in. We were talking about marriage, but were in no rush. We were certain we'd always be together, so we were just enjoying the moment. When we threw a housewarming party, I felt obligated to invite my parents. Unfortunately, without telling me. They also brought my sister and her kids. The moment I saw her, I was furious, but I didn't want to make a scene in front of the guests, so I kept quiet. Tom greeted them politely and offered drinks while I glared at my parents. My dad came over, looking a bit embarrassed, and told me he hadn't wanted to bring Miranda, but Mum thought it would be the perfect chance for us to reconcile. Miranda loudly told the kids to go hug me because I was their aunt. I forced a smile as they hugged me. Then Miranda began lecturing me that I needed to be a more involved aunt because the kids barely knew me and I should make more of an effort. I clenched my teeth to keep from saying something that would embarrass her in front of everyone. During the party, I noticed Miranda was constantly drinking wine and paying absolutely no attention to her kids. They behaved terribly, chasing our dog, trying to kick her or pull her tail, attempting to sneak into our bedroom, which I had specifically locked so guests wouldn't enter, and even managing to break a vase while playing. I was on the verge of exploding and kept looking at Miranda, waiting for her to say something to the kids, but she didn't care at all. She just laughed, drank, and acted as if nothing was wrong. When some guests wanted to see the house, Miranda joined the tour. I showed everyone the rooms, and when we went out into the yard, Miranda loudly commented that the house was too big for just the two of us. Then she asked loudly enough for everyone to hear whether I planned to have kids. That immediately drew the attention of the guests, who all looked at me curiously. I sharply told her that it was none of her business. She replied that my life decisions were a matter for the whole family, especially since I was an aunt. My irritation was growing, but I kept myself in check in front of the guests. The more she drank, the more provocative her behavior became. Miranda started making inappropriate remarks about my relationship with Tom, saying we were wasting time by not getting married and not having kids. I felt the tension in the room but chose to ignore her comments. Later that evening, after most guests had left, I decided it was time to address the situation. I pulled Miranda aside and told her exactly what I thought of her behavior, especially given our complicated history. As expected, she took it badly, accusing me of arrogance and ingratitude, reminding me of all the time I supposedly owed her for letting me babysit her kids in the past. Our parents tried to calm things down. Mum again urged me to forgive Miranda, but I stood firm and told them all to leave. After that incident, I decided I never wanted to see my sister again or my mother, who constantly defended her. I thought that if I cut off contact, things would improve, but yesterday morning, there was an unexpected knock at the door. When I opened it, Miranda was standing there, looking desperate. She hurriedly explained that she had a serious problem at work and no one else to watch her kids. She begged me to keep them for just a few hours. I looked at the kids, they looked tired and worn out, and it hurt me to think she had dragged them out so early just to bring them to me. I asked why she hadn't gone to our parents, and she said they were at our aunt's house, which I later confirmed. When I suggested she call her ex-husband, she said he was asleep because he had worked a night shift. So, according to her, I was her last hope. Reluctantly, I agreed, and she left looking satisfied. After closing the door, I felt both annoyed and sorry for the kids. The sheer audacity of Miranda dropping them off without warning, with no regard for my own plans, was astonishing. Despite my resentment, I decided to make the kids comfortable. We played, watched cartoons, and I even got them interested in drawing and other simple activities. Surprisingly, they calmed down quickly once we got to know each other better, and I even started enjoying their company. By lunchtime, I realized I had no idea whether they had any food allergies. Not wanting to risk it, I tried calling Miranda, no answer. I called again, voicemail. I decided to ask the kids directly. Gently, I explained that their mum seemed busy at work and wasn't answering her phone, and I carefully asked if they had any allergies or foods they disliked. The older girl, while talking about food preferences, suddenly mentioned that maybe mum wasn't answering because she was at a wedding. I frowned and asked how she knew that. She hesitated, then admitted she had overheard Miranda talking about it with a friend on the way to my house. The puzzle clicked into place, and I felt a wave of anger. I thanked the kids for their honesty and reassured them that everything was fine. Then I called my parents to get to the bottom of it. After a long argument, Mum finally admitted Miranda had indeed gone to a wedding where children weren't allowed. She went with her new boyfriend, who apparently had no idea she was a mother of two. Mum tried to justify it by saying men don't like women with kids, so Miranda decided to hide the fact. But I was furious she had lied to me yet again and manipulated me into babysitting. I checked Miranda's Instagram to confirm. Sure enough, there were fresh stories from the wedding. She was smiling and drinking. I shook my head in disappointment. Browsing her page, I realized there wasn't a single photo of her children. My sister, a mother of two, was actively pretending to be single and child-free, erasing her own kids from her public life. Later, when Miranda came to pick up the kids, we had a massive argument. I made it clear I would not be part of her deception and warned her, if you ever dump your kids on me like this again, I'll call social services. Miranda exploded at this and started insulting me, but then Tom, who had come home from work, stepped in. He threatened to call the police, and she left immediately. After everything, I feel drained and emotionally exhausted. I'm grateful Tom is always on my side, but Mum and our aunt have already called, urging me to show more understanding toward the struggles of a single mother and insisting I need to learn to help the family in difficult times. First update, many thanks to everyone for your understanding and support. I've received numerous messages from strangers asking if I was okay and sharing their own stories about toxic relatives similar to my sister. After reading the comments, I realized that my mother also behaves in a very toxic way, continuing to let my sister walk all over me. It's obvious she still favors Miranda, even though Miranda is the real problem. I'm planning to have a serious talk with my mum. I called my aunt to hear her version of events and found out that my mum hadn't told her the whole truth. So I did it for her. When my aunt learned that Miranda had lied to me, forced me to babysit her kids, and hid from her boyfriend that she was a mother of two, she apologized and promised to speak with my mum. I don't know exactly what conversation they had, but soon after, my mum sent me a message scolding me for dragging my aunt into our personal matters and for making my sister look bad. I'm so tired of my mum making ridiculous excuses for Miranda's behavior while never calling her out on anything. Second update, 2 weeks have passed since my last update. Despite my efforts to distance myself from Miranda, the tension in the family only grew. My mum kept pressuring me to forgive Miranda and be part of her life again, meaning to babysit her kids. She even started emotionally blackmailing me, saying that she and my dad are getting older and soon Miranda would be the only family I have left. I decided to have an honest conversation with my mum and asked to meet her alone, warning her in advance not to bring up Miranda. She agreed. We met in a quiet CAF and I hoped for a calm, honest talk. After sitting down, I took a deep breath, preparing myself. I started by saying I love her and Dad very much and want to maintain a healthy relationship with them. I told her I understood her worries about aging and the importance of family unity, but stressed that my emotional well-being is just as important if we are to have a good relationship. I explained the enormous emotional damage Miranda's manipulation has caused me over the years and why I need to prioritize my mental health. My mum, clearly conflicted, listened as I gave examples of Miranda's toxic behavior since childhood and described how it affected my life. I shared how often I had been ignored, used, and manipulated. I hoped she would understand how serious this was. Her face showed a mix of emotions: guilt, realization, and sadness. Then, to my surprise, she admitted that she had always been aware of Miranda's manipulative nature, but chose to turn a blind eye to preserve at least the appearance of family harmony. She explained that Miranda had been born prematurely with some health issues, which terrified her. As a result, she overprotected Miranda and was simply grateful that her child was alive and well, making her blind to Miranda's actions. Hearing this broke my heart. I reminded her that I am also her child and needed her too. It's not my fault I was born healthy. I said I understood her struggles back then, but urged her to have an honest talk with Miranda. Otherwise, her own children might one day treat her with the same resentment I feel now. I emphasized that family problems can only be resolved if everyone is willing to acknowledge them openly. My mum nodded, which shocked me because I didn't expect her to truly hear me. We talked about the importance of boundaries, and I explained I needed space, so I planned to avoid contact for a while. She begged me not to disappear for years, told me she loved me, and regretted what I'd been through. I reassured her I wasn't planning to vanish forever, I just needed time. After this talk, I felt much better. Later, my dad reached out to me privately. He also acknowledged Miranda's manipulative character and said he understood my decision. He admitted he regretted allowing her to behave that way for so many years and promised to respect my wish to protect my mental health. He told me he would always support me, which is perhaps the best thing a parent can say. I have completely cut off contact with Miranda and even installed cameras at my front door so that if she tries anything again, I'll have grounds to call the police. Third update. It's been 4 months since my last update. The reason for my absence is that I decided to take a break from social media and deleted all my apps. My mental health has greatly improved. I also started seeing a therapist regularly and focusing on personal growth. Tom and I are still going strong. Last month, during a romantic date on the beach, he unexpectedly proposed to me. It was incredibly sweet. He was nervous and slightly trembling when he got down on one knee and pulled out the ring. I still can't believe that in a few months I'll be marrying such a wonderful man. I told my parents the news. Even though we don't talk often, they were thrilled for me and adore Tom. Recently, I found out that Miranda moved out of our parents' house after they finally lost patience with her constant late-night partying and coming home drunk at dawn. She tried to argue, but had no choice but to leave. My parents agreed to pay her rent for 6 months. After that, she'll have to manage on her own. Dave still pays her child support each month, but I doubt it will cover all her expenses. I can only hope she will grow up and start acting responsibly for the sake of her children. That's all for now. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Personally, I don't think Miranda will change and will likely continue her bad behavior.